Good evening. It's 5 o'clock on Monday, April 20th. And I'd like to call this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Lansing City Council to order and ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Carter?
Here.
Councilmember Garza? Councilmember Hussein? Here. Councilmember Cost? Here. Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Navarez Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Pelivan-Oglu?
Present.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Present.
7 members present.
That is a quorum, and Councilmember Garza does have an excused absence this evening. The first order of business are the minutes from April 6, 2026. I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I move the minutes from April 6, 2026 as presented.
Proper motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. This evening for public comment, if you wish to provide public comment, there is a sign-up sheet in the back. Please do so. A public comment sign-up will run through the last budget presentation this evening. So we'll make that announcement a couple times, but if you're wishing to speak for public comment, please sign up at the back of the room, and the committee will not take any action until after we receive public comment. Our first item is an interview for appointment of Patrick Spike for the LEPFA at-large member. Mr. Spike in the room? There you are. If you'd like to join us down here at the, there's a table here just through the double doors there. And when you sit down, there's a button that says push that, and the green light will come on, and then you can address the committee. How this typically goes is, folks, you have a chance to introduce yourself, tell us why you're interested in serving on the board, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll take a vote. And welcome.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Spike. I am the CEO of LabQ Credit Union, and I have interest in being on the board as a steward for the community. These are important assets, and I think that we need to be of service as leadership. And so I bring my leadership, I bring the 90 years of my organization, and we've been proud sponsors of the Lug Nuts. We've been downtown since the beginning, since there was a vision by Mayor Hollister, Mayor McCain before that, and it's our institution's belief to be of service. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? And Councilmember Hussein.
Yeah, and I just typically ask, first of all, thank you for everything you do, and thanks for your willingness to step up and serve on yet another board. But in any event, your application is from nearly a year ago. Has anything changed with regard to your application, the information you put on there that would affect your eligibility?
So there's a little bit of confusion. I apologize because I filled out a new application, but I think it's for what's going to happen in June because I'm being appointed now, but there is a new one that I've worked out with somebody.
Okay,
so
perfect. And that was going to be my other question, actually, is that I know that's on tonight for referral, so you do have an interest to serve beyond June of 2026.
Yeah, so, and they had me fill out a form for, I think, in June.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, let me say this, and I'm sure other folks will have some things to say. You know, incredible career, I think one of distinction. I did read that you were the 2019 Michigan Credit Union Professional of the Year. And during that time, the Michigan Credit Union League stated that you were mission-driven as someone who was always trying to make an impact in people's lives. And I wanted to just take a moment and speak to kind of the importance of credit unions, particularly in communities such as mine, right, where some of our census tracts are considered economically disadvantaged census tracts. We know that in the United States, some 21 million people right now, in terms of adult-age citizens, are living in what we call financial deserts. And we know that when we talk about credit unions, you know, obviously we appreciate traditional banks, but we talk about the importance of credit unions in terms of communities such as mine. We talk about, you know, fair loan terms. We talk about lower interest rates. We talk about, you know, people building credit, financial literacy, that type of thing. And it really can be transformative. And so when you look at credit unions and banking partners and things of that nature, I know all 10 years I'm on council, I've worked really hard to try to get somebody to come up into Southwest Lansing and break up that reality that so many of our citizens in Southwest Lansing are faced with. And a lot of our financial partners talk the talk. They understand the importance of disrupting some of that lack of access. And then some walk the walk, and you guys are certainly one of those groups. And so I really appreciate some of the work you guys are doing in terms of exploring different suites of products and things like that to actually support economically disadvantaged areas. But the other thing is I really appreciate you and Kelly Ellsworth and some of the other folks that have worked really hard on the partnership with Brent Forsberg to actually have some type of presence at Pleasant Grove and Homes and with the Pleasant Grove redevelopment project. I don't know that folks really understand how impactful and transformative that might be, and just how rare it is for an entity such as yourself, or I should say the entity you represent, to step up in that way. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Hi, thank you so much for being here tonight and being willing to serve. As you said, LAFCU has been a longtime supporter of the Lugnuts and of the city. What role do you see LEPFA and their 3 facilities playing in the overall strategic success of our city?
I think they're a really important part. I think it's really important assets to our city. There are other cities that a river runs through that has very similar assets. And I think it's important to protect them. I think it's important to stand behind them. I think it's important to be a voice sometimes for the voiceless, and sometimes a building maybe doesn't have a voice. We know the importance long ago when it was brought forward to us for the Lugnuts, and that was to provide family-friendly entertainment in a place that had not had that in a very, very, very long time. My organization, my personal beliefs, believe in supporting that. And that means that we have to find the time, we have to show up, and we have to be stewards for the things that we believe in. And my teams do it, I do it, my board does it, and we're doing that in the communities. And I appreciate the recognition that council has for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I will say you all provided me with my first car loan when I was in college, so thank you very much for that. But I'm also very thankful for your willingness to serve. So without any further questions, we will say thank you. Like I said, we're going to vote after public comment, but appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
And what will happen next is we will vote on this at committee, and then it will be up on the agenda for our 7 o'clock meeting this evening at City Council. If you want to stick around for that, we can swear you in tonight. If you've got places to be this evening, you can make an appointment with the clerk to swear you in at another day. Yes. Long story short, yes. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is we're beginning our budget presentations. The first up this evening is our city clerk, who will now take a turn on the other side of the red timer and present his budget. Mr. Clerk, I think you know the drill. We're going to set the timer just to keep things
I even
moving.
get a timer.
Yes. Would you like to control the timer?
I won't take 15 minutes,
Okay.
I'm sure. All right. Well, thank you for having me. So the 3 things that my department accomplished in the past year, I would say primary is the renovations and opening of our Lansing Elections Office, LEO, while running elections at the same time. The space has already become very popular for the administration, council members, and others to use as a meeting space. So we're glad to have an accessible location with lots of parking, lots of training space, and all the needed space for our equipment. Another accomplishment is expanding our passport services. We've been doing late nights once a month on council meeting evenings so that we aren't having additional cost of security for the building. And we get between 20 and 40 applicants in each session, often families. And then the fees that we collect do cover the staff overtime. We've also been doing off-site passport services with the Salis Center, the Refugee Development Center, and the Gender Affirmation Project. So we send a kit and things out and are able to assist some people who may not feel comfortable in a site like City Hall to get their documents processed. And then the third accomplishment is we have made great strides in getting prepared for the new City Hall. As you may be aware, if you've ever been in our vaults, we had a vault full of paper, full of records, some of them what are permanent records. And when under record retention policies, when you say a record is permanent, that doesn't mean for the next 10 or 20 years, it means forever. So we have been working with our IT department. We have digitized a great number of records, and we will have, by the time we move, we will have very few records because we will not have a vault for our department in the new City Hall. So the things that we will have will primarily be things, like there's a couple of files that the attorneys want us to keep as hard documents. We will have very, very little in terms of paper in the new City Hall, and we're creating very little new paper because of the processes we have. Any new contracts being approved by the city are not even being created on paper. So 3 primary goals: secure, accurate, and accessible elections. So we have updated our election worker curriculum just to make it easier to learn. As we're training for this May special election, we've already gotten some very positive feedback on the changes that we've made. People that have been working for a number of years feeling like they are better able to grasp it. So we continue to do that, and as well as continued outreach and education of voters. So, we have the 3 primary options. Voters can vote at home, vote early, or vote election day. So we continue to stress those options and provide information to voters about those options. One thing that we are looking to do is in 2024, Meridian Township had a satellite office on the Michigan State University campus in WKR Studios, along with the City of East Lansing's early voting, and we're looking to replicate that because we do have, number 1, students that are on campus, and number 2, some of those students, they're on campus during the day, but they live in the City of Lansing, and a lot of students aren't really sure what city they live in, so they go ahead and think that they can go to early vote at that studio, which is not possible, but we can be there to get them hooked up with an absentee ballot so they don't have to make a second trip and they can get their voting accomplished. And then we are looking at more efficient ways to document the chain of custody for our election equipment. We're looking at some programs that have geotagging so that we can have constant visibility as they're, we have to deliver high-functioning, high-valuable, high-security equipment to all the polling places. So we just want to have better ways to make sure that everything goes to the right place and we know where everything is at all times. Second goal would be to finish the renovations at our elections office. If you've been in the room, the training room, the community room, you might have noticed that the sound is a little bit more echoey than it should be, so we're working on that. We're working to get that room set up, and we're working on maybe trying to figure out streaming capabilities so that we can have two-way communication. If people want to have a meeting there and do that. We didn't realize that some of the wiring that was there was they were HDMI cables that are not current, and so they kind of need to be pulled through the ceiling. And we need to do some things to just make it really work correctly, and maybe get some microphones and things like that, and just make it a little bit more usable for folks. And then our small training room for computer training, we're just trying to get that up to date, and that's a secondary room that we can let people use. That one, unfortunately, we can't secure from the rest of the building, so that could only be used by my office or while we're staffing it. And then, of course, the move to the new City Hall. When we were headed to Leo, we thought the building would be ready in August, and so we geared everything to have the November election there, and then we ended up being there more like the beginning of October, so we were moving during an election, and we really do not want to do that again. So we want to move either well before or after the November election, especially being a gubernatorial election. It'll be very busy. So since our elections are mainly run out of the Leo office, it's not as big of a deal, but we just want to make sure that we're not dealing with so many moving parts at the same time. And again, also making sure that we're fully digitized so that we're just minimizing our paper footprint there. And what has changed our budget request? As always, election costs continue to increase. We try to be very efficient with mailing out ballots, but we are required to mail out the 23,000. We do work with KCI, our vendor, to make sure that we're able to get very good postage rates, especially the ones that are mailed out far ahead of the election. We're able to use nonprofit rate for that as opposed to the first class rate, but all of the rates are going up. Increased pay for election inspectors. We do have to remain competitive. We have a number of communities surrounding us that some of them pay more per hour than we do for election workers, so we have increased that a little bit to make sure that we remain competitive. But that's not just election day, that's also the 9 days of early voting as well as the early processing of absentee ballots. But to be more efficient, we have reduced the number of precincts. So we're down to 27 precincts here in the city of Lansing. When I became clerk, there were 62. So with the shift to people voting by mail, we've been able to do that and still actually not have people wait in line. Our goal is, as always, has been no more than a half an hour in line, and we've been able to meet that pretty consistently. Just to kind of let you know, the state of Michigan is in a bid process for new statewide election equipment. That will not be an option for us in terms of yes or no. It will be a yes, we must do this when the state says we must do this. I've been lobbying with other clerks to try and get that to be a state-funded item. I've also been lobbying for election infrastructure funding at the federal level, and in fact, I'm going on a trip soon to do some more lobbying in that way. So I'm trying to make that equipment not be a burden on our citizens. And then I do want to mention one thing that is not in this budget, but might need to be eventually. We might need an amendment. The state, there's a package of state bills that would move the state primary from August to May. And that would be on a statewide basis, and that would impact depending on when and how it gets enacted, that could impact the city election next May, meaning that all of the costs that we kind of are envisioning for July and later of 2027 could happen in the fiscal year that of this budget. So if that the bills have passed the Senate, I'm told they will pass the House. I don't know what the effective date they will land on, but if it does impact the budget we're working on, I'll be back to address that with you. Fee increases. We have developed a pattern on our licenses that we apply an inflationary factor, but what we do is we kind of let it build up until it becomes a round number. So it ends up being about every 4 years each of our business licenses gets a small increase. The ones where they aren't already capped, like some of them are. And then we have added a fee to this budget for our elections training room for non-city users. And the fee is different based on whether it's during our regular hours where it doesn't cost us much to oversee them, to an after-hours rental where we might have to have additional staff. And then in honor, thank you, by the way, for having my budget hearing on 4/20, since we are responsible for all the licensing of our marijuana facilities. Our revenue share has been 1.4 million of the city general fund. And that's in addition to the 5,000 per applicant license fee. So we are generating some significant revenue for the city through that. But just the way the market is working, I do anticipate that that number may be reduced in future years. So that's what I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Councilor Zink.
We appreciate you being here, obviously, in that presentation. Chris, is there anything that was in your proposed budget to the mayor that did not make it into the recommended budget from the mayor to council?
No, I don't think they knocked anything out. I'm trying to confirm with my staff. I think we dropped the ball on, I wanted to put a placeholder in for some capital funds for a room at Leo, but we never came up with a number, and I don't think we ever put anything in, so.
Oops, sorry. Thank you. And I was going to ask you about, kind of strategic, efficiency-driven improvements internally to make sure that quality of services remains high, but that we're also being fiscally responsive, right? And so sometimes we think about staff and staff optimization, and we think of software improvements and things of that nature. You did a great job talking about some of the things you guys are doing internally in terms of good postage rates through your vendor, reducing the number of precincts over time. The fact that you're lobbying for funding in terms of those machines is fantastic. Digitizing documents, the like. Is there anything else you want to share with the council and the public that you guys are doing internally to make sure that you're as lean as possible?
Well, we actually piloted something with the mail vendor also that was pretty interesting. KCI, who processes all the city's mail, has gotten some equipment where they can actually put together the whole package of a ballot, which is complicated because it all goes in one envelope, but you've got the return envelope, the instructions, the secrecy sleeve, the ballot, and I think it's very important to include the I voted sticker with that as well. So they now have a piece of equipment where they can assemble all of that, and instead of a mix of staff and volunteer hours taking about a week, it was less than 1 day. So we don't know. Since we were the pilot, they gave it to us basically for the cost of the materials. So we don't know what they're going to end up with a cost once they try and turn it into a business model. But that's something that has the potential to create efficiency for us. Yeah.
Any further questions? Smart to include the sticker.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no further questions, we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. See you at 7. Our next presentation from the department budget's perspective is the Neighborhoods, Arts, and Citizens Engagement Department. Delisa Fontaine is here to present on NACE. And Delisa, welcome. You know the drill down at the table. I just want to remind you, we have a 15-minute timer just to keep things moving, but do not feel rushed. If we are speaking and having good dialogue, we'll extend the time.
Oh, there we go. Well, thank you for having me here this evening. Clerk Swope stole my thunder with the 420 joke, so I won't take anything from that.
You got to make them at council, otherwise they don't count for the bingo card.
So I'll just jump right on into it. Question number 1. What are 3 accomplishments that your department achieved last year? And so for each of the questions that you did ask, I did break them into neighborhoods, Office of Neighborhood Safety, and 311, so I've got them all separated out. So number 1, our Neighborhood Resource Summit attendance and vendor attendance. In April 2025, we had 60 organizations registered for our Neighborhood Resource Summit, and in October 2025, we had 63 organizations. This year, we had a cap at 65 organizations, and we had to turn some away. So we are very proud of retaining the vendors that have wanted to participate in our Neighborhood Resource Summits, but we're starting to grow out of our locations. And so we're looking for larger locations across Lansing if anyone is watching and listening. Number 2, the implementation of the Office of Neighborhood Safety. We hired our violence prevention coordinator, and one of the first things that we tasked her with was to convene a extreme risk protection order, regional convening in partnership with Mayors Against Illegal Guns in every town for gun safety. We expected a total of 30 to 40 attendees. We ended up with 55 attendees from across the region. That included members from the state of Michigan offices of violence intervention, Department of Civil Rights, Michigan Department of Attorney General. We had several organizations from across the city of Lansing, including the Lansing School District, CMH, EVE, MPHI, NAMI, 54A District Court, Voices of Color, and LPD. We had organizations from East Lansing, from Ann Arbor, Flint, and Dearborn who attended. And then for 311, we maintained a resolution rate over the course of the last year of over 90%. And we have published a online dashboard with real-time information. So if you go to the City of Lansing webpage, under 311, you are able to see real-time information of the calls that we have received within the last 30 days, 90 days, and all time. And you will see a service map of where they're located. You'll see a pie chart of the different calls that we are receiving from across the city. So question number 2. What are 3 priorities and goals your department aims to accomplish this year? Well, number 1, one of our goals and one of our priorities is to increase engagement with our Ward 2 civic organizations. Our neighborhood resource coordinator has engaged with neighbors that have fallen back from engagement. A lot of that happened over the pandemic, but we are looking to do more targeted engagement in Ward 2. So, council member, you'll be hearing from us, and we will be attending more of those constituent meetings, but we would like to see more engagement, especially when it comes to our neighborhood grants and our programs in Ward 2. CVI establishment within the City of Lansing. We are looking at the details for transitioning the advanced peace model into the City of Lansing while continuing to partner with MPHI, Ingham County, and other participants for various aspects of that model. And our violence prevention coordinator is currently working with the National Criminal Justice Reform Center and Lansing Empowerment Network to landscape and differentiate prevention and intervention efforts, which will in turn will allow for a better understanding community-wide of all of our community-based organizations and their work. And then for 311, our expansion to in-person service this year. Our 311 staff will rotate shifts at the one-stop shop in the new City Hall, and the goal is to always have 2 311 agents that will be available at the front counter. Currently, our call volume, especially during peak times for our department partners, and that's tax time, elections, beginning of fiscal year, property tax due dates, cold months, Wednesdays, Mondays, Thursdays. In these peak times, we sometimes run a thin level of staffing. 2 additional agents will allow us to fill those gaps and take the pressure off of our current staff. This will also allow us to expand our 311 services to more community events, constituent meetings, citywide events, and other programs where the public could get things done without having to call or come to City Hall and outside of City Hall general hours. And that will model our 311 on a Go plan that we discussed last year. So then question 3. What has changed in your budget request, and what is one-time versus ongoing? Well, any requests that we made, they're all ongoing. And for example, the additional call center positions and the Office of Neighborhood Safety funding through the Public Safety Revenue Sharing Fund. Okay, question 4. How are staffing levels and vacancies affecting your budget and operations? We do not currently have any vacancies in our department. Matter of fact, I have to tell people to go home when it's time to go home. But we are adding 2 additional call center agents and anticipate filling those positions quickly. Question 5, what steps are your department taking to optimize the budget and contain costs? And so I wrote in here, like, are you referring to cutting coupons? Because literally we do. When we're buying supplies for our neighborhood events and things like that, we try to catch sales, we try to stock up, we try to get the best bang for our buck. But we do our best to be good stewards of our budgeted funds. And also, our violence prevention coordinator is currently working closely with the city strategy analysts, to identify and apply for grants and appropriations that will align with our department's work. And question 6, what internal metrics or performance-based strategies ensure operational efficiencies? Well, because many of our activities are programmatic, we set metrics for each program. We aim for a full Citizens Academy class. We try to up our attendance at neighborhood resource summits, and that includes our vendor engagements. Number of completed applications from returning and new community-based organizations for our neighborhood grants. And we are still working on what the metrics would look like for the Office of Neighborhood Safety. And for the 311 call center, we do not monitor our call time because we focus more on results than the number of calls taken by each agent, but we do monitor our resolution rates, and they have maintained above 90%. Performance-based coaching in our department is key, and communication with our team to know what is needed to ensure success. And I left a lot of time for questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Are there questions? Councilmember Navarez-Martinez?
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. You mentioned that one of your goals is to increase your outreach in Ward 2. How do the numbers of applications compare from Ward 2 to the other wards? Do you know?
Well, when I think about the number of applications, when I think about the number of registered organizations I currently have, they all typically apply for our neighborhood grants and programs. My goal is to re-engage, similar like Forest View. Forest View was really engaged prior to COVID, but circumstances happened and that organization has not been engaged with our department. And so to re-engage them, when I compare Ward 2 to our other departments, it's very low. But, or not other departments, excuse me, our other wards, but it's very low. And so I would like to help residents in Ward 2 understand how to create a civic organization, to understand that it could be big, it could be small, what that would look like for their neighborhoods, however it would look.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yeah, so just real quick, I wanted to talk about the Office of Public Safety, that's exciting, right? So thank you for everything you've done. I appreciate Mike Lynn, who's actually in the audience, for his advocacy. I know Councilman Spatafor had a lot to do with that as well. So we certainly appreciate everybody's work. That being, and I understand the critical partnerships that we have with Advanced Peace and MPHI and the Lansing Empowerment Network. But in terms of internal, right, in terms of city staff, is that a staff of one at this point? If so, is there any plan to grow? Go ahead.
Oh, I've always got plans to grow, but not in this budget request, and I don't see it growing in the next budget request. But when I think of what it would look like if it were to grow, if and when we bring in the Advanced Peace model, that will be adding to our Office of Neighborhood Safety staff. But right now, we just have one full-time employee.
I appreciate that. A little bit about 311. In terms of, you said resolution rate was at 90%. Does that simply mean that you're not having to, 90% of the calls, you guys are actually resolving that and you don't have to move that on to specific departments? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
So that means that resolution for that call took place during that one phone call and did not have to get escalated to additional departments.
Okay. Also, with regard to 311, I've gotten a lot of calls and concerns about, as we continue to progress as a city and become, as an example, a little bit more steeped in technology, processes are complex, and obviously our community is aging. There's been some concerns that folks are, particularly our senior citizens, struggling to kind of navigate what is complexity, right, in those processes. I know a number of communities, you look at like Grand Rapids in their 2016 launch of the age-friendly Grand Rapids initiative, and that's a little bit more kind of systemic, kind of across all city government, but there's also a number of municipalities across the state of Michigan that are onboarding like a senior citizen navigator. And so I wonder if we've had any conversations with regard to 311 about maybe having somebody specific to actually assisting seniors, again, through some of these really complex processes and navigating city government, or if there is special training for all, maybe 311 call center agents in terms of working with our senior citizens.
I think that's an excellent point to make. I think as we train our 311 call center agents in customer service, I don't know if we've trained specifically for senior citizens, right? But they are trained to let's say, walk through an entire process with somebody. If you're applying for something online and you have questions about it, they will walk you through the entire process. Like they're not going to just say, oh, it's located on this webpage, you figure it out. They'll walk you through the entire process, start to finish. Could we expand on that? Absolutely. I think it depends on the calls that we receive. So I would welcome anybody who would like to call and would like to walk through processes, would like to have someone help them, especially when we get the one-stop shop at City Hall, we'll have somebody in person. But as of right now, like they'll definitely walk you line by line through anything that you need to do, whether it's on the city website, whether it's on Lansing Connect. I've had agents who will put in a Lansing Connect thing for a caller so that they don't even have to worry about doing it.
We'll keep the conversation going. I think it's important, but you guys are doing great work.
Thank you.
The other piece is that, and we had a conversation prior to this meeting, there's no 311 charge in terms of city media, city attorney, human resources, LFD, and LPD budgets. There are, however, a couple. You have council with a line item of $1,800, so there's an allocation there. Even though we didn't opt in, right, and we don't consider ourselves necessarily utilizers of the 311 call system. We have an administrative assistant that does that work. And then also with regard to assessing, we know that our assessor stated during the presentation that they too do not utilize 311 or they don't opt in, yet their budget reflects a $39,000 line item. Can you speak to why that is, how we determine who is charged, how we determine how much they are charged, et cetera?
So yes, that data was from the previous year of calls that came to 311 with questions that agents can answer quickly on the same call. So just like with the process we use for assessing, as you mentioned, is another department that we don't partner with. Although we do not have an official partnership, to keep the cost fair across the board, this is our method of billing and accounting for every single call that comes into 311. So anything above the same call answer of public information, we'll transfer that call to the department, which is we'll transfer to city council or we'll transfer to assessing. But if our agents are answering the actual phone calls that come in that are able to be answered right quick, right? So we may get phone calls that say, we're looking for council member contact information. When are council member meetings and or agendas? Where can I locate those? Requests to be sent to the council office, we will send those directly to the council office. How do I sign up for virtual comment? That's another thing where we'll walk them step by step to do it. Ordinance questions, and how do I apply for boards, committees, et cetera. Our definition of a partnership is anything above the public information that's available on the city website. So when we sit down in partnership with the departments and we create knowledge-based articles with the subject matter experts of that department that handle calls, that's a little bit more detailed in nature and have specific instructions on how to handle the call. But if we're getting calls that are answered with that one short answer, then we bill each department accordingly.
Councilmember Carter.
Thank you, President Spatafor. Thank you, Delisa, for being here. Couple questions. Well, first, thank you for allowing your representatives, at least two, to be in person. There has been some feedback that I received. A lot of individuals prefer that face-to-face interaction, so thank you for that. But I was curious to know that small percentage of calls that are not being resolved. Is there anything in particular that you can pinpoint, or any particular situation that is more frequent that cannot be resolved within that small percentage?
I'd have to dig into some of the phone calls, and maybe if I was to jump into specifics, I could send that answer by email if I was to jump into specifics. But one quick example that can pop in my head would be perhaps something that has to be escalated to public service and could be have to take care of like 2 or 3 different calls to that department, right? Something a little bit deeper than what we have the subject matter experts have explained to us. And we do kind of have that cutoff. So I would like to be able to get that information to you and give you real specifics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Martinez.
Hi, thank you so much for being here tonight. You laid out a lot of different metrics and data, and I very much appreciate that. From a bird's eye view, if you could say, what does success look like for our department, how would you put that?
What does success look like for our department? community engagement, engagement with government, seeing more and more people engage with our local government, being able to utilize our neighborhood grants to complete projects. I wish I could list like maybe one thing, but there's so many different things. I'm very proud of my team. I have an amazing team, and I think they're amazingly awesome. And gosh, there's just so many different things. So what is success to our department is different every single day.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Oh, this was easy. Thank you.
We can start if you want. Hold on, let me-
Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Thanks for being here. Next up is the Department of Economic Development and Planning with the Director, Raleigh Van Fossen. And just as a reminder for those that are just joining us, if you wish to speak at public comment this evening, there is a sign-up sheet in the back. Sign-up will go through the end of the budget presentations, and then we will go through public comment. Raleigh, the floor is yours.
Thanks,
Ryan?
President Spatafor. To continue with the 420 trend, since Clerk Swope started it, while they may, and Delisa, or Director Fontaine mentioned it as well, we are the team that inspects all of those licensed marijuana facilities here in the city of Lansing. So I don't know what that gets you on your bingo card tonight, but a third mention, there it is. Joining me tonight is our Deputy Director, Brian Dreyer, and certainly pleased to be before all of you to talk about EDP's budget request for next year. So as my colleagues have done thus far tonight, I will go question by question and certainly entertain any additional comments or questions members may have. This one's a tough one in the grand scheme, all of the questions, because, and I'll start with kind of a recursor of who EDP is, because we have the privilege of myself and Brian overseeing 6 unique divisions that impact, in my opinion, almost every aspect of city life. So as a reminder, that's our planning and zoning office, that's our community development team, our folks with parking services, and I am joined tonight by our manager, Hal King, in the back. Our Office of Financial Empowerment, also joined by our manager and director, Tiffany McKissick, or Lou McKissick, am I getting that? Our building safety team, and our code enforcement. So as you can imagine, as I'm tasked with answering some of these questions, especially only providing 3 goals or 3 accomplishments, can get difficult because they're all doing a lot of great work. We also find time being a liaison support to the Lansing EDC team and our Brownfield Authority and TIFA, as well as myself serving as an ex officio member of LEPFA, and as well as a representative of the city on the Land Bank Board. So question 1, though, what are 3 accomplishments that we achieved last year? I have more than 3, so bear with me. First and foremost, a huge shout out to the great work. Many of you who have been on council or active in the community prior will know the work that Amber Paxton started on behalf of the city, and certainly Tiffany and her team now get the honor and privilege of continuing. But Tiffany, myself, and Brian are proud to report that our Lansing School District graduating class of 2027, so next year, which if you remember is the first enrolled cohort in the Lansing SAVE program, we are on track and actually have met the goal that each one of them will graduate with a minimum of $500 in their Lansing SAVE account by next May of 2027. So Tiffany and team are a year and a half ahead of reaching that goal. Secondly, in last year's budget, with your support, we were able to add an additional code officer to the team. And so with that, we've onboarded that, as well as you recall recently in the last few weeks, you assisted us with the onboarding and implementation of the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code, along with a revamp of our notice and placarding system throughout the city. Within our community development office, one of the accomplishments we want to report out is last summer we invested $900,000 of our community development block grant funding and kicked off a home repair programming partnership with a county-led consortium, including the County Housing Trust Fund, Capital Area Community Services, Ingham County Land Bank, and Capital Area Housing Partnership. That stretches our $900,000 in CDBG by allowing the housing millage countywide to be partnered with the delivery of our CDBG here right in the city of Lansing. Within our building safety office, representing just over 2,000 building permits. They received and approved a construction value of $388 million of active building work here in the city in year 2025. And certainly, but not last, our parking services team, one of the goals and accomplishments of the last year, if you recall me talking about a partnership in some of our enforcement throughout our neighborhoods as an effort to not just rely on code enforcement. Parking has taken lead on all front yard parking violations, and we had over 171 of those in 2025. What are 3 priorities or goals that our department aims to accomplish this year? And by this year, I'm interpreting the upcoming soon budget year or new fiscal year. Within our planning and zoning office, that's finalizing a draft of our comprehensive plan update and beginning the community engagement process and ultimate approval process with input from our planning commission as well as this body. You may recall the current design Lansing plan was last adopted in 2012 with a handful of 5-year updates, but we're looking to do a much more comprehensive plan now that we're over 10 years out from that. Within that plan and that engagement effort, this body, through amendments to our form-based code, allowed for the addition of accessory dwelling units on certain properties throughout the city. And so we're looking to partner out in the community with an architectural firm to have 4 pre-approved ADU plans that hopefully homeowners who have properties that fit within all the constraints of what the ordinance allows can select one of those pre-approved plans should they choose to implement an accessory dwelling unit in their property. Within our community development office, we will be launching an RFP in the coming weeks as 2026 marks the end of our 5-year consolidated plan. You've heard from our senior planner, Doris Witherspoon, and community development manager, Aaron Butendorp, in the last couple of weeks on our annual action plan. HUD requires a 5-year, think of it as a master plan, and then each year this body adopts an annual action plan representatory of that 5-year plan. So we'll be going out to bid, and so next year one of those goals will be working with the community as well as this body to adopt our next 5-year plan. That's specifically an important for this department. If you follow on the federal level, those dollars that this community receives direct from HUD, that's our community development block grant, that's our home dollars, and our emergency solution dollars. Unfortunately, with the current makeup of the federal administration, it seems to be a pawn each year in the budget cycle. We were successful last year, as many communities lobbying to see the preservation of that, but I hate to report that currently with the budget discussions at the federal level for this coming year, it's back on the chopping block. And so executing that 5-year plan will be an effort to reinforce Lansing's goals as it relates to what those dollars can do and who they can serve, with hopes of advocating with our partners at the federal level for their preservation. Another goal and priority is to further assess, refine, and revise the way we serve our community in 2026 and beyond. This is going to include more community engagement, implementing electronic means to apply and pay for permits and schedule those inspections, and site plans specifically. All of those things, if those accomplishments or if those goals are accomplished, will assist in cutting down on inspection timeline. This includes plans to grow our Lansing Save program in terms of how we annually fund for those efforts. So you'll see some exciting new events coming in 2026, as well as you'll see in this budget request the additional of 2 code officers. That was a budget priority of this body, as well as a department priority, with an effort of those, if approved in the budget request, assisting with further enforcement along our commercial corridors. Question 3, what has changed in our request and what is one-time versus ongoing? Most of the changes, as I see them, are cost of living adjustments. The major change in current requests is the addition of those 2 code officers. There's a variety of ongoing capital projects that you'll see specific in the parking services budget and their capital improvement plan. Within the Office of Financial Empowerment, we're bringing back funds in-house from what was previously allocated to a vendor within the delivery of our Lansing Save program. We previously outsourced that to a banking partner, and we're still partnering with that banking partner, but instead of paying them for the direct service in the schools, in an agreement with them, we're bringing those funds back in-house to have a little bit more say in the oversight and delivery of what happens in the 3 high schools, as well as connecting it with our Greater Bold initiative. So that we'll be calling that a Bold coordinator. And then there's a variety of efforts to improve the current office space at 316, noting that not the entirety of the department is moving to New City Hall, so building safety and code enforcement will be staying. So building safety has some funds out of their enterprise funds. They will be moving over to Suite D, if you're familiar. That's where my office, development, and planning is at. We'll be moving out to go to New City Hall. Building safety will take over that space, and that'll allow for code enforcement to expand throughout the entire Suite C. So there's some funding to assist with that effort on the building safety side. How are staffing levels and vacancies affecting our budget and operations? The team we have now, as many of you know and have the honor and privilege of interacting with and vice versa, works hard to maintain the level of service that puts Lansing's residents first, even in a time when vacancies occur. When those vacancies occur, though, we first and foremost work within the division to fill the gap. And in areas where we can't, we certainly make use of temporary help as we can. Some of our positions require state licensing and so forth, so it's a little bit more difficult to rely on temp help for that. But additionally, I'm excited. I don't know if you've heard from our human resources team yet in this process, but we work weekly with HR and our assigned specialists and getting report outs on our vacancies so that we can, as best as can, stay ahead of the recruitment process for when vacancies occur. There's a question if we are expecting any retirements. There are certainly 3 to 4 folks within our entire department that are at that retirement eligibility, if not have served beyond that. To my knowledge, I don't know that we have any plans of retirement in this next year, which is great. It continues to show their desire to stay and work on behalf of the city. But we work closely with them to ensure some operational redundancy as we can. So if we know of somebody retiring in the next 6 to 12 months, we do what we can within HR to ensure some redundancy ahead of that. Question 5, what steps is our department taking to optimize the budget and contain costs? A couple examples, specifically within our parking services team, we replaced an older enforcement vehicle with a new vehicle from Fleet and installed a new license plate recognition software that previously wasn't there. That assists. We have 4 enforcement officers on the parking end. So by that 4th vehicle finally being transformed in and having the addition of that LPR system, it allows their enforcement to be quicker. They're no longer having to get out of the car as much, using the handheld tablet and so forth, and they can rely on that system that's mounted right on the car. In building safety, you heard in last year's budget request, which I appreciate the support for the members who voted on it, who are present, we successfully onboarded and deployed iPads as well as drones within our building safety team that assists on their inspections and truly cuts down on the work they have to do when they get back to the office. As you heard, in '25, over $380 million in building permits issued, so every minute of their time is precious. And if they can do more work in the field, whether it's reviewing plans on site, making notes based on that inspection, instead of handwriting that and having to spend time at the office in their cubicle filling that out, that's a win-win. And then last but not least, we have, between grant administration, staff, and division leadership, there's an effort to review financials more regularly to ensure timeliness of our spending. We have 2 incredible divisions that are almost nearly all grant funded, both the community development team receiving only grant dollars through HUD, as well as our Office of Financial Empowerment relying on a variety of different grant sources. And so having better financial review systems, working more closely with finance, especially as we implemented the new BS&A software, has been incredibly important. And we've been able to see that effort play out in better timeliness and monitoring of both ourselves as stewards of those dollars, but certainly the folks we grant some of that out to. Lastly, an effort to optimize our budget and contain costs is creating a forward-facing dashboard. This has been talked about in many ways, whether, and this comment is specifically within our code enforcement team, whether it's getting to a point of finally publicizing our red tag or former pink tag. Now that we've implemented the new yellow, white notices, red and black placards, we're working to create a public dashboard that will be updated, because that's a common question we get from many of you, we get from the community, we certainly get from our media partners. And so it's an effort to try and make some of that more forward-facing, and if possible, which I think so, we'll certainly cut down on some of the administrative staff time having to answer those questions. Lastly, what internal metrics or performance-based strategies ensure operational efficiency? Again, you've heard me say that each division is unique, so trying to list a few key performance indicators that covers the entire department is difficult, but for example, parking services reviews special event bookings and requests pre and post-event for better management of our surface lot and ramp assets. Our community development team, through monthly financial status reports, tracks committed grant spending and performance. We do that now monthly versus in past quarterly, or some cases biannually. This allows for more immediate changes as needed, both internally and if with any of our community partners. The Office of Financial Empowerment utilizes dashboard reports created through our systems and in partnership with some of our grant funders. This allows us to better analyze specifically our Financial Empowerment Center work. That's the free one-on-one counseling that residents can take advantage of. This allows us to review and track client savings, investments, debt consolidation, et cetera, and see where improvements can be made in that work as time permits. And then lastly, code enforcement, through a change in leadership structure and team structure, now having a North and South team, better implementation and understanding of the new BSNA software. We review monthly enforcement performance by officer and by area to ensure compliance, identify potential future litigation and strategies as it relates, and finally evaluate any patterns or trends we may be seeing in a specific neighborhood, or better yet, with a specific property owner. 50 seconds left.
50 seconds left. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Van Fossen? Councilmember Cost, then Councilmember Hussein. And
Thank you. And thank you for being here, Raleigh. Just a couple questions. Sure. What is the turnaround time right now for inspections with the current staff we have?
It's funny. Are you talking building safety, code?
Yeah, code.
Code, okay.
Sorry.
It depends. And the same would depend for building safety on the certain trade you're asking about. But within code enforcement, if it's rental inspections, we are scheduling those within 1 to 2 weeks. There are areas that have a higher volume of rental properties that are coming up for recert than others, but in that case, we're able to pull from other areas to bring an officer in. So that's a newer effort, I think, from what previous leadership in the department has chosen to do in past. They would only allow that area officer to inspect that rental. We now, the two leads, have the power either themselves to step in if an officer is booked or out on vacation, as well as pulling others. A great example is the work being done at Evergreen, the former Autumn Ridge. They are moving faster and faster as they get better and better at the buildings that they've been renovating. And so that's an effort where we're able to pull multiple officers to the property as needed, so that they're not waiting on that one officer.
Okay. And that's good. So with the 2 additional code officers that you're asking for in this, are we pulling code officers off right now for commercial stuff from residential, or how does that work? Because I know there was a separation, right, between commercial and residential.
So I will first start by saying every code officer, premise officer, and then the specific commercial corridor specialist assigned to the Planning and Zoning Office all maintain the same certification by the International Property Maintenance Code. That's both in residential enforcement as well as zoning enforcement. So both of those certifications allow all of them to write an enforcement on a residential property, a commercial property, et cetera. Past practice of the department prior to my arrival was code officers and premise officers only deal with residential properties. And then when this body created the zoning commercial corridor specialists, they were left to enforce commercial properties, specifically corridors. There are commercial properties that aren't on our, mainstream discussed commercial corridors. And so over the last year, as we've ensured every officer to get certified, obtain regular training, we are now branching out. There's more senior level officers who are initiating the commercial enforcement if it's not on a corridor. But the whole, the long-term expectation is that if you're an officer assigned to an area, whether code, meaning you go into the property generally because of a rental, or premise, just exterior, or even the lone commercial corridor, that if there's a citation within a commercial property, you have the authority to inspect it, address it, and enforce it as needed versus relying on just that one position. The hope with the budget ask, if supported by this body, is that we know that's a change and that there will be more commercial enforcement needed, which is, I think, much to go why we need these 2 additional officers. They might not be labeled as commercial corridor because we want to ensure some fluidity and flexibility within their position, but absolutely can guarantee, if funded, that's going to be a priority of both of those positions.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to shift gears real quick just to parking. Is the department's policy when someone is appealing a parking ticket to continue increasing the fee per the schedule during the appeal process?
It's, to my knowledge, not not department policy. So there's a policy in which this body adopts that if you pay by this date, it's this amount. Another 14 days, it may go up. Another 14 days after that, it goes up. And then a final referral to court if not paid. But my understanding, if there's a pending appeal, that there would be a pause in that transgression of those. Certainly, if there's a more direct circumstance, I'd be happy to look into that. And follow
There
up.
actually, coincidentally, this week is.
Okay.
I will email you about that then. I just had a conversation with the city attorney about this
Sure.
as well. And then the other thing I would be curious about, I don't know that, you said 4 parking enforcement officers right now. Is that enough? And this is why I ask this. I have heard from numerous residents in different parts of town that we don't always do the best job of communicating with them. And so I wonder if officers are getting tired because there's 4 of them and they're working an entire city.
That's a lot to unpack in that. I will first say parking services for maybe those who don't recall, or those watching, is an enterprise fund, meaning they do not receive any general fund dollars as a function of what they do. So in an effort for me to want more enforcement, if that was going to be my answer, I would have to be able to direct that or attribute that to potential increased planned revenue. And so that's we don't see that in our budget. And certainly if there was a significant increased revenue, we have assets that need help as well. I think the 4 folks who are doing the work now doing a phenomenal job. We've have one of them who stays and works a later shift. And I will say over the last year, and we continue to get better and better, is to push them out into the neighborhoods more than they rely on their current pathways through our commercial districts like downtown, Old Town, and so forth. We hear from our partners at DLI and OTCA that they see parking plenty, and in fact would like to see parking maybe perhaps less. And so that allows us to reevaluate where we send those enforcement staff. And over the last year, Hal and his team have made a great effort to put them in the field, and a direct correlation or data that Brian and I get to see that relates to that is the increase in front yard parking violations that they've issued.
Okay. And then the last question I have on parking is, as someone that goes to the Lugnuts games, the parking system that we've had, and I think I brought this up to Hal in the past, or maybe you, it seems archaic, right? Because you get a ticket to go into the lot, and then the lineup gets ridiculous trying to get out because everyone's putting that paper ticket in, and then having to pay at the kiosk when there's a parking person that's there at the start and there at the finish. So is there any plans to look at how we're doing that and perhaps go to like a Michigan State style where, when I go to a hockey game and I park at Breslin, I pay $5 to get in, that's it. And then when you leave, the exits are open.
Certainly, yes, and I would say we do that with many of our special events. Certainly we do that for Silver Bells where you pay as you're pulling in, right? And then there's no need to wait to pay as you exit. And so happy to talk with Hal afterwards and see if that's already being implemented during Lugnuts games, or if it's implemented at least on certain lots, and perhaps why on other places. Certainly, I imagine some of the struggle to do that in our ramps per se, like the North Grand ramp, which we see utilized during games, on top of just our surface lots, becomes also a part-time and seasonal staffing effort. But happy to talk and reply back to this body on how we're currently doing that for the Lugnuts games, and maybe there's some wins we can take from our other special events, again, like Silver Bells, where we are doing the model you explained.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Costa. Councilmember Hussein.
Yeah, just one follow-up. You talked a little bit about the placard and notice system changing out and implementation. So I would assume that the implementation included, or includes mailings and the actual physical switching out of the placards. So number one, where are we at with regard to that? And then in terms of standing up this new system within economic development and planning, has there been a significant cost? Do we predict that there will be a significant cost moving forward? What are the budget implications?
I'm going to go kind of backwards in the line in which you asked. We don't see any major budget implications outside the minor increases in office supplies and a couple other things. Nothing too out of the ordinary to implement this. In terms of status of where we're at now, We have new stickers and notices. Those just came in a week or two ago. And so the team is deploying those already. They were deploying them prior, but we were using in-house versions. And so we're now have those final versions in-house and are able to deploy those to all the officers in the field. The final step that the team is finishing working on is anything that was existing, red tag and pink tag, and making sure the officers are getting out to those properties, swapping it, as well as, to your point, ensuring that ownership of impacted party or impacted property is receiving that communication. We're on track for that full implementation by the end of this fiscal year. And again, the priority was getting the team set up for success for the next day, right? When they get called out and something, instead of it being pink, is now going to be yellow, or something's could be red, but really it's going to be black, was getting them set up for that. And now we're in kind of that second phase, which is addressing everything prior to council's approval and seeing that that gets switched over.
Any other questions? Councilmember Navarez Martinez.
Hi. You mentioned that you're working on the comprehensive plan. Are you redoing the whole plan, or is it a comprehensive plan update where it's more condensed?
Sure. It's not going to be a full redo in terms if you're thinking of like an outside consultant or hiring that effort. It's going to be staff led. And that was a discussion internally with the planning office to see if that's something Sue and Andy felt comfortable. And that was their preference based on the updates they've been doing on a 5-year basis. And so it's going to be staff led, but there's going to still be opportunities and desire to go ward by ward to get that feedback that having, or that we would have, if hired an outside consultant, would have done that work. Much of the why the in-house versus the external too is a lot of the work that the LEDC team is already doing in terms of neighborhood engagement. There's a large effort that they've already undertaken in terms of looking at Southwest Lansing specifically and envisioning that moving forward. And I believe that they're currently reviewing RFPs in partnership with our department and the Department of Neighborhoods that will do the same effort for the Baker-Denora neighborhood as well as Willow Walnut, kind of the 3 focus neighborhoods that this body has done. So we're going to work to tag team on a lot of that and try to not have to spend time on our own consultant. And then finally, we know that the HUD consolidated plan will be consultant-led, and so there will be efforts for us to pull from that as well. But to short answer, internal staff-led.
Okay. The comprehensive plan is almost 15 years old, and I would suggest that maybe it would be time to work on a new one. But I understand, what you just mentioned as your reasoning. But I would say that maybe next year, on the 15th anniversary of the comprehensive plan, it might be time to do a new one. So thank you on that. You mentioned the 4 pre-approved ADUs, working with a firm. Did you put out an RFP already for that, for the architecture?
Not yet.
firm?
No.
Okay.
That'll hopefully be either towards the end of this fiscal year or at the start of next fiscal year. Our junior planner followed his fiance to Atlanta, Georgia, about a month ago. So we're currently in the midst of filling that position.
I know.
Yeah.
My students are all
Yes,
all over that.
we have over 30 applicants. I know some from Michigan State. So we're excited to fill that. But that once that position's filled, we'll be able to finalize the efforts. But that will be an RFP effort.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on tonight's episode of Budget Presentations is our Department of Public Service with Director Andy Kilpatrick. And while Director Kilpatrick is coming down the well, those of you wishing to speak for public comment, the sign-up sheet's in the back. We will do that at the end of Budget Presentations.
All right, thank you very much for having us tonight. Jeremiah Kilgore, Deputy Director, is also with me. And just as Raleigh has a bunch of stuff under his department, we have a lot under ours, but I will not try and go through like an answer for every single one of our divisions. I'm trying to keep it brief to the highlights. And if I have to use these, I see a bunch of you that have glasses too, but I'll try not to. I put it big here. But for the first question, 3 accomplishments you've achieved last year. And we look more at calendar year because construction goes over fiscal year, so I try and do it like ours is kind of construction season, so ours is basically calendar 25. Michigan Avenue project, for better or worse, that one had been discussed for probably decades, and we finally got that one done. It was a $14 million project and included people love it or hate it. I mean, the trees came down, new trees, they got moved, sidewalks, moved the curbs, did underground work and the road. So that's kind of a vision that was implemented, and people will say it's not perfect, and I would agree it's not perfect, but it's kind of the best we had with the parameters we had to work with. The second one, again, there'll be people that think maybe this is not a great approach, and you can see probably in council's budget a rental rate. We looked at kind of similar to what we do with city vehicles. All the departments, we were looking at the cost for their space and assigning that to the departments, basically more transparency for everyone, so it's not all those costs. They basically run through property management now, so as opposed to that being the source for the general fund revenue, we distribute that to the users. So our department has multiple funds and they're paying into that, other departments as well. The exceptions are the wastewater plant, they take care of their own facilities, and parking, also being an enterprise fund, takes care of those. But that is now something new, and I'm sure people will have a question of why am I charged this amount? And just like with our vehicles, we are looking back at costs, historical costs, and charging those based on square footage. And for those that are moving to City Hall and public safety, it's based on the new square footage there, not on the current square footage and layouts. The next one, or the final one, is our recycling drop-off center. We've been talking about that for a while, and so at our O&M complex on South Street, we now have a place that people can drop off anything that they can do curbside, so businesses or apartment buildings that don't have recycling can drop off there. And then also polystyrene, so styrofoam, you can drop off that. That goes down to DART. No cost to us, they come and pick it up. And then we are also taking plastic bags and food scraps there as well. So pretty much everything you can do curbside. Or if you're a city employee and you don't live in the city, please bring your stuff and drop it off for us, because then we will take care of it. We've gotten about 40 tons so far since September. It's really only about 1% of the tonnage we're getting, but it's still going to be 75 or more tons, probably even ramping up as we get that out there. So that's a good thing and another option for people. Question 2, priorities for this coming year. We're through winter, I think, but one of the things we're looking at is adding more liquids capabilities for our trucks, so basically going to a brine solution. And the benefit of that is right now we're kind of pre-wetting salt when we apply it, but with brine we can apply that much in advance of a storm, and it stays there and doesn't go off to the side, so we can kind of minimize or maximize the effectiveness and minimize kind of the overtime. So we'll be actually out addressing the main issues there versus only focusing on, say, state trunk lines and major streets. We'll be able to spread that out better, and it should save us money as well, 25 to maybe 30% in salt costs, because we're applying that more effectively and can apply less, which is probably better for the environment, because all this goes in the drain and goes into the rivers and goes into the Great Lakes, and you can actually see the salinity increasing. Plus, as everyone knows, it's not great for your cars, so the less salt we put down there, probably the better it is for people's vehicles. Other thing, which again, most residents will want this, is with the extra funding we are getting from the state, with gas tax funding, we'll be increasing the number of road project and miles we're doing. And then because of sort of the dynamic with the millage we have for roads and sidewalks, we're able to switch some of that money, move that a little bit, and so there will be more money for sidewalks. So we'll be ramping that up as well. Unfortunately, costs are going up. I mean, revenue is going up and costs are going up. So we used to say that our average was about $500,000 a mile in local streets and about $1 million per mile on our major streets. Now it's our sort of blend is $1.5 million per mile. So if we're getting, say, 9 million more from the state, that's only 6 more miles of road that we're doing overall. Sidewalk costs are also going up, maybe not as dramatically, but again, we will start to have very soon at least what we were doing this year and plan for next year. The input that we receive from the public, we have that mapped, and we're trying to use that as sort of a guide, as well as where we're doing projects over the next upcoming years. So if people think something's super important, we'll try and look at that at least and put out kind of a map and list on that so people will know what roads are being done over the next couple of years. Another one that people will not see probably is we're putting a large solar array at the wastewater plant. That is kind of under construction now. It will be probably late 26 or early 27, and that's actually online. It should generate about 25% of the electricity that's used by that plant when it's online. So it's basically every place that we're mowing out there now, a large field, will be a solar array. So if any council members would like to take a tour of the plant, it's a great thing. I think it's fascinating, and there are tunnels out there that people might not know about, and all sorts of other stuff. Big ponds I would not suggest you go swimming in, but it's a lot of water out there. The other thing we're kind of in the midst of is updating our walking and biking plan, our kind of full update. Well, we didn't really have a full update. We had a 2012, we updated a little bit in-house, so this is the first full update of that, and we have the overall vision, and then we'll be going out to the community to get some input for the next, say, 2 to 5 years of what projects people think are most important for us to either do internally that we have funding for, or they would like us to apply for grant funding if we don't have the funding for that right now. Third question, as far as the budget request, what has changed? Honestly, this is sort of status quo with inflationary increases. The exceptions, we have a request to change 6 solid waste or cart seasonals to full-timers. And really the reason for that is we have not been able to successfully get seasonals. So we're almost wanting just to go from 0 people doing that to 2 people. We're thinking if we get full-timers, that is something we'll be able to attract more easily because there are benefits. It's still tough because we require a commercial driver's license, and people with those CDLs can a lot of times get better paying jobs if they're willing to put in the hours and be out of town, and on trucking companies, especially with the changes to on the federal level for on the licensing for that. We're seeing a real need on the commercial driver's license side, so that will still be a challenge. I'll mention it now, even though it maybe comes more in kind of the vacancies, but we also are implementing some trainee programs, hopefully for people that don't have a CDL right now, but meet all the other requirements, to bring them in and help them through that to get a commercial driver's license. We're doing the same thing with our mechanics that are hard to find mechanics, that if they kind of show the aptitude, we bring them in at a lower level as a trainee, and we've been able to successfully kind of move them to full-time positions. So we will be looking at that for other hard-to-fill positions as well. There is a change, as I mentioned, with our property management, kind of as being an internal service fund. So pretty much everything that is inward facing will be in a different fund, and that will be supported by building rental revenue. We still will have the general fund account. That will be primarily for work that they are doing on special events. So we're not going to charge people for all the setup on electrical and plumbing. Hopefully, at some point in time, the revenues coming in for that will balance those. So we'll be, have 2 internal service funds, but the general fund is pretty much going away, and that's moving into an internal service fund that the building rental will just kind of flow through and take care of the buildings. And then other thing, you'll see a lot of changes year to year on our capital improvement, projects, but generally the amounts stay somewhat static. The big ones there are on the roadside, where we don't list out every project, but we have a category that's just major maintenance, both on our major streets and local streets, and then bridges. And then there are huge projects on our sanitary sewer fund, but they're different every year. We have sewer separation projects, and those have been taking the bulk of our CIP dollars for decades. Now we're starting to show some love to the plant itself, which has been ignored, and we have significant needs out there, probably in the tune of well over $100 million, probably 150, and we can't do that all at once, but we're going to, as much as possible, kind of pair that with our sewer separation projects with the state revolving fund loan, because with that we get very low interest rate, and there is, at least through next fiscal year, principal forgiveness of 10-ish%. So whatever we get there, it's cost us less money, and those loans are right around 2% or so. So it's very good interest rate for us. Question 4, staffing levels and vacancies. Unfortunately, with all the kind of specific positions in our department, we've been probably averaging 20-ish% vacancy for years and years, and that's because we can't bring in a class of public service, public works folks and bring them in and train them. We do have a sort of an entry level. They go through solid waste, go other places, and really what happens is people move up internally. We have retirements, and so we are constantly filling those. We have a very seasoned workforce, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So we know we will have more retirements coming up. We don't always know when they are going to happen, but we know that we have people who are eligible, and we will always have that turnover. So I think HR is doing a good job in trying to fill the positions, but it is hard with some of these specific skill sets that we need to always find those. So any ideas, we're willing to look at those. I mean, when we have our job fair and hiring for seasonals and others, we found that has been successful, but it's really hard for these specialty positions to try and always get them. We'll always have emergencies and overtime too, so there's no way on our side we will eliminate overtime. And some of that, if we have vacancies and we have critical work to do, then some of that is more overtime for our staff. Or in some cases, if we're not able to do it internally within the required time, we will contract that work out. So that's a balance. There's some things we almost always contract out, like significant road paving, whereas the smaller stuff, we're more nimble and we're able to do that more cost effectively in-house. Question 5, the steps we're taking to optimize the budget and contain costs. As we talked about the building side, we're doing a comprehensive energy analysis. So a lot of times people would have just the money in their budget to pay for utilities and didn't really look at whether that was high or low. So we're benchmarking that, we're tracking those, and hopefully we'll be able to see some areas where we can achieve some savings on that side. We're doing some operational analyses, so we're looking at vehicle use, whether it's hours or miles, because we have some vehicles in the city that they're only getting a couple thousand miles. Well, does that really make sense? Is that really necessary? So we'll work with the departments that have those vehicles and say, here are the alternatives. Maybe there's a pool of vehicles. You check those out, like the city hall, the loaners down there. You check them out, reserve them, as opposed to someone having a dedicated vehicle. So we're trying to increase the utilization of those vehicles. Or if we have specialty vehicles that aren't getting used that much, it is more cost effective to rent those, especially on a public service side. And we can go to a rental place as opposed to sitting around and having to maintain it when it's really not getting used. We're also looking at cart billing, so our trash billing, how we're doing that, the options there. We have, I don't want to say a high rate, but repeat folks that do not pay on time. They have to pay more. Sometimes we repossess carts. That is not cost effective for us. It's not cost effective for the residents because now they're paying more than they would have initially. So we're looking at options for that, whether it's they pay more frequently, less frequently. We don't really know. Obviously, it's a service you have to pay for, but we don't want people to have to pay extra, especially the folks that I think are paying extra, the ones that probably can't afford to do that or have other priorities, which is why they're not able to pay on time anyway. So looking at that. We're also looking at how we're purchasing materials, especially on our property management side. Sometimes, they'll go to the store and buy something, then they'll find they need something else, they go again. And just to look in planning, some more utilized materials, we have those in stock, so we're not having to run out constantly and do that. Or purchase them different ways, maybe actually having someone deliver them to us versus having an hour of time that someone spends buying, a small thing. And then the other thing is just doing some cost of service studies of what the cost is really for us to provide the service versus what we're charging for that. We're doing that on the sanitary sewer fund right now and how we're setting those rates. Previously, we've been looking at the revenue needed to achieve that, but now we're actually looking at what the cost is to deliver the service. And we're also coordinating projects with utilities, so the Board of Water and Light, consumers, MDOT, other agencies, and always looking for grants when available. And I'm going to go over, I'll take Raleigh's 50 seconds and maybe add to that. Internal metrics, we have a bunch. I'll just go through those quickly. For the streets, the main thing is our condition rating. It's 1 to 10, PACER, but it's green, yellow, red, and we look at that every other year. Number of potholes filled, that could be good or bad, and tons of pothole patch used. Miles paved. For the sidewalks, we look at number of complaints, the number of cuts or wedges we put in there, and the miles repaired. On the fleet, it's pretty much the vehicle cost per mile, and then the average vehicle age or metrics we're using on that side. Forestry looks at number of trees trimmed, cut down, and planted. Sewers, look at the percentage of our system that's still combined or number of acres that are combined. We do report to the state the volume and number of overflows we have. So every time we have a rain over about a ½ inch, we do overflow some combined sewage to the river, and that's going to get to 0, but it takes a while to do that. The volume treated, number of catch basins cleaned, number of miles televised or cleaned, For buildings, we're looking at utility costs and number of work orders. Recycling and yard waste is pretty much the volume collected. And then all those we're using more as performance metrics versus how we inform, budget decisions. I guess the exception would be if we're not able to keep up with service levels. At that point in time, we would have to look at maybe increasing funding for either contracting or staffing. But that's not an issue at this time. That's it.
All right, with 9 seconds, we held the countdown and counted. Are there questions for the director? Thank you, both of you. Councilmember Hussein.
First, thank you, Andrew, Jeremiah. Michelle's not here, but I want to thank her. You guys hear from me and other council members a lot because of the broad set of services that your department does, in fact,
And I will say,
provide.
our success, the question that was asked, our success, which is never going to happen, would not be in getting complaints, because that means we're anticipating everything, no issues, no potholes, but we know with aging infrastructure and funding the way it is, we're always going to get those concerns. And I don't want to say we shouldn't get them, because we don't know everything that's going on out in people's neighborhoods. We don't know. We drive the roads, but we're not looking for every specific thing. So we really appreciate when we get those in. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah, and I just wanted to recognize just how responsive you all are, how much work you all do. I certainly didn't, as an example, expect you to text me back at almost 10 o'clock last night when I texted you before I went to bed. I didn't want to lose that thought, but you did. Right? That's just who you guys are, and we really appreciate that. Also, your public service board. I think of Jason Wilkes, and I think of Nancy Malo and Samara Morgan, and incredible servants that work really hard to represent folks out in the community, and they speak very, very highly of you all as well. Just a couple quick questions. With regard to street sweeping, we get this question all the time, right? We have weather intensifying, we have more dirt and debris, things of that nature building up. Frankly, we have an issue, and this is a societal issue. It's not just Lansing, but more people are littering, that type of thing. And so obviously we're seeing those storm drains clogged up. We're seeing issues with flooding. We're seeing pollutants get into our waterways. And frankly, it looks terrible. So you talk to us a little bit about street sweeping, how much we're doing it. Are there internal conversations about maybe enhancing our capability to do more? Do we have new trucks? Give us some information.
Yep. So I don't know how long ago, but our standard had been that we were doing major streets 8 times a year, local streets 4 times a year. Right now, we're half of that. Plus, I guess I could say we do push leaves at the end of the season. Now, this last year, we were in the middle of pushing, and it got too cold. I mean, we started to get snow and everything, so we had a fair number of streets that were not done. So in the spring, when we got the rains and everything, yes, we had issues there. Those are the areas we hit first when we started our street sweep. But since they use water, we can't do it when it's freezing. So if it's going below freezing, we don't sweep the streets yet. We are into, I don't know what percentage we are, but I think we actually do have a dashboard, so you can actually look at that now. My hope would be that we would get back higher on that, maybe closer. Maybe we were just even. We do major streets 4 times and we do local streets 4 times, because I think what I've seen is there are more leaves and trees in the neighborhood streets than there are on the major streets, and the debris by the vehicles gets swept to the curb line more. So overall for the streets, I think it's almost as important or maybe more important to do our neighborhood streets than it is our major streets. The caveat in what you brought up is that we have some areas where people even rake in the street and rake their gutter pan and bag that, and we pick that up. There are other places where either they don't, or some people decide that it's more convenient for them just to rake things into the street, thinking that we will pick them up, and eventually we do, but that's not the intent. Our hope is that kind of it's a partnership, that we will get out there and do the things that people can't get, but they will take care of the leaves from the street trees and their trees and everything else that blows there. So I think it's not necessarily so much a staffing or equipment issue. It may be more just a priority issue, and I guess we'll look at that and see if we're able to ramp that up and what that would take, if we need to buy another street sweeper, or we need to do that different times of the day. We've switched that to doing during the day. It used to be all at night. That was convenient when we had the overnight parking ban, when people shouldn't be parking in the street. Now we're finding actually that more people have their cars off the street during the day when they're at work, and at night is actually harder, at least in the neighborhood streets. So we do our major streets later in the day, and kind of during the day we will do our neighborhood streets. But that's something we can look at.
So just to follow up, so in terms of the street sweepers, how many do we own, number one? And then number two, I know some of those vehicles, they look new and they look smaller. And I don't know if that's impacting service at all. Can you speak to that?
I don't think so. We still have,
Yeah, so we have three street sweepers. I believe the oldest is 3 years old, and they're the same ones that we used to have, so the Elgins, same size. Yep, yep.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Can we also talk about the sign shop, right? And so in terms of operations, number of employees, I think that's my first question. Then also, do we provide, and obviously there's a budget implication of this, do we provide training to ensure that they are bucket certified, the folks within the sign shop? So, okay, because there was some commentary, I don't know if it was on social media or whatever, that those folks had all been pulled out, they were in parks. Is that not the case?
so sign shop, again, a long time ago, used to have dedicated sign shop employees when Transportation and Parking Office was under Economic Development and Planning.
Right.
Now they're under the surface group, and so people do kind of go back and forth doing other things. They'll do guardrail, they'll do potholes. We actually have 2 new employees are now in the sign shop and training, and so hopefully with staffing being stabilized, we'll be able to have that. But they can help out, but to be in the bucket, you have to be bucket certified. So they can be a ground person and drive around, but they have to be certified to be in that bucket.
Okay, and do we support them with
Yes.
regard to that certification?
Yes. Yep.
In terms of snowplows, I wanted to talk about that real quick. I know we're continuing to maintain, but there are times where we have to purchase. And are we continuing to purchase all kind of 3 types? So we're talking wing plows, we're talking underbody plows, and front plows? Or
Not
are we
many
moving
front
towards?
plows, more underbody, and I think things might change a little bit. We're doing more of the, what we call, it's a small junior wing and full wing, so we're able to do that more cost effectively. We're also switching now with liquids. We will have a full tank of liquid on there, whereas now they're just side tanks. So you'll see little difference there. I don't think we're ever going to get it completely away from rock salt or a sand salt mix, because we can't do it all with the brine solution, but we continue to purchase those every year. We're looking at kind of the mix of sizes of trucks. The issue with all heavy-duty equipment right now is the lead times for that. Some are, year to 2 years when we put the order in. But yes, and we have money in the budget, with the rental rate we're talking about, that is, we're purchasing those when those need to be replaced.
Okay, and maybe I heard you wrong, but I thought you said that you guys are kind of moving away from front plows. My concern with that is, you think of drifts, you think of piling of snow. I would assume that you have to have front plows to do that.
We still have front plowers. They're
Okay.
just not used as often.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In terms of, let me see. You actually answered a number of these questions, which I appreciate. Where do we wash our vehicles, particularly our large vehicles? They're driving around. You see the rust. You're starting to see the corrosion. And so when we talk about maintaining and sustaining over a long period of time, what are we doing?
That is a great question. So our large vehicles down at South Street at O&M, we do have a wash bay there, and so they can kind of wash those off in there. Long term, if you haven't been down to the South Street complex to see where all our vehicles are outside, in the back there, we had doors on those garages, and then those had issues. Long term, we need to replace that building. If we do, that will have an inside kind of large vehicle area where we can do both kind of catwalk up top to get over top of them and underneath. But when we looked at what a large vehicle kind of automated wash would be, it was in the $1.5 million range to do that. And when we looked at what that cost per wash would be for us only, it was going to be $50, $100 per vehicle when they're washed. So if it were something that were regional and other agencies were using it, it could make sense. But we think a good solution long term might be, if we're able to in the future replace that facility, we could have sort of a drive-through bay there that they could do those more often. But when we do apply some agents there that will limit the rusting, of that, and we are buying with the frames we buy to make sure that we can kind of have extended life on there. But it is an issue. It's an issue with personal vehicles, and when we're talking a lot of money for this equipment, the last thing we want is to have them, rushed out because we weren't able to take care of them.
Right. Okay. I'm glad those conversations are happening. And then in terms of vehicles, I think of, much of the fleet that would assist people getting to the curbside to do work, right? And so, obviously, maybe it's trash pickup and recycling. How we know we are struggling with forestry and we're struggling with tree trimming and that type of thing. How is that impacting, particularly when we're not seeing the clearance of 14 to 16 feet? How is that impacting our employees in terms of actually and frankly, we've seen a number of species of plants actually planted in the right of way that probably shouldn't have been planted in the right of way. So I guess my question is with regard to the service, right? How is that impacting, but also the vehicle itself? Is that causing damage?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
it does. I mean, sometimes we have large vehicles. If the drivers don't see a low limb, they'll hit it. It won't be just our vehicles, other large vehicles that are going through there. We're able to get through our hazardous trimming every year, but not our maintenance trimming as frequently as we would like to. And you mentioned tree species. Yes, I think when a lot of these were planted, and I don't know if it was 20, 40, 60 years ago, they were planting the wrong species for the amount of space that was available. The trees got too big, the roots, are causing sidewalk issues, and that's something we're being very conscious about now, that our tree species will probably be smaller. So if we have a narrow parkway, it will be a smaller tree. We are not planting trees that are going to get 20, 30, 40 feet right under power lines, so those kind of trees will be smaller ornamental trees. The hope is that if people really like a species of tree, they can plant it in their yard, and then it can get as big as they want it to get, but the ones that are going to be in the right of way over time will probably be smaller.
Okay, and then just, I promise, one last follow-up. You said something about if an employee does not see a limb, which made me think. I would hope that we're not penalizing employees. If there's, as an example, a damage to a city truck that is potentially a result of us not trimming our trees in the right of way.
Probably is a case-by-case basis. I mean, some things are obvious, like if a limb is 6 feet tall, you probably should know if you have a 10, 12-foot truck that you can't fit under it. Other things might not be so obvious, but there's a process and there's collective bargaining agreement process to go through for those, and all those circumstances come out.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you both. Next item is our Human Relations and Community Services Department with our interim director, Davida Moses. And then, as a reminder, folks here wishing to make public comment on the Committee of the Whole agenda, there is a sign-up sheet, not to be confused with the sign-up forms that will be at the next meeting. So this is the last opportunity to sign up before we collect that sign-up sheet. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you. Jake, I think you're good. Oh, no? All right, you have to go.
Jake passed, so, okay.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I am Delbeda Moses, Interim Director of Human Relations and Community Services. I have here with me today, to my left, Amy Crank, Contract Administrator. To my right, I have Kimberly Coleman, former Director of HRCS and current Transitional Housing and Homelessness Strategy Consultant. I also have, hi Roy, I have Roy Plowman, Project Manager for the city, and we do have members of our team out in the audience. So we will go ahead and get started with the questions. HRCS is committed to meeting the needs of our community and ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone we serve. Throughout 2025, we followed through on that commitment in meaningful ways, including making significant progress in addressing homelessness, expanding housing solutions, and strengthening community engagement through a coordinated, collaborative approach. So let me walk you through each of our accomplishments in these areas. Our first accomplishment was Lansing's Path Forward Homelessness Study and Strategic Framework. The department commissioned Public Policy Associates, PPA, to conduct a comprehensive data-driven study to better understand homelessness in the city of Lansing and to identify actionable solutions. This effort engaged 674 individuals, including those with lived experience, along with 66 local organizations and departments. From there, HRCS convened multiple community meetings and ongoing engagement where we received valuable feedback and input. We have also partnered with the Continuum of Care, the COC, to begin putting the results of the study into action. This study had a meaningful impact on how we move forward as a community. It established a data-informed foundation for a citywide response to homelessness and produced 9 strategic recommendations that address housing access, service gaps, and broader systemic challenges. Most importantly, the recommendations of the study will be used to create a community-wide strategic plan that will guide our efforts trying to combat homelessness going forward. One of the recommendations of the homelessness study was to strengthen housing solutions by developing or expanding bridge housing models, which ultimately laid the groundwork for our next accomplishment, which is the Mod Pods, better known as the Nova Lansing Housing Initiative. HRCS launched the NOVA initiative to create transitional housing options to support individuals moving toward permanent housing. This included the acquisition of 50 modular housing units to establish a professionally managed transitional housing community with capacities to serve up to 66 individuals. The department also led a citywide engagement campaign to connect with the community to introduce the model, gather feedback, answer questions, and build community support. The NOVA initiative is designed to make a meaningful impact. It will expand access to safe, fully equipped transitional housing while integrating on-site wraparound services to support long-term stability and self-sufficiency. It also aims to create community awareness and participation in housing solutions. Most importantly, it represents a critical step toward turning strategic recommendations into a tangible, implementation-ready program. The third accomplishment that HRCS is proud of, we're proud of our community engagement, our partnerships, and service delivery throughout last year. Community engagement, partnerships, and service delivery has been a major focus for our department. We strengthened our community engagement and cross-sector collaboration to ensure more inclusive decision-making and more effective service delivery. We did this by facilitating 28 community meetings that engaged over 650 residents through the homelessness study and the NOVA initiative, creating meaningful opportunities for people to share their perspectives and help shape our work. Through this engagement, we received input and suggestions on potential locations for NOVA, and as a result, our team physically visited and vetted more than 60 community-identified sites. We also coordinated a joint effort between advisory boards to narrow these sites down to a final recommendation for the mayor. In addition, we provided direct assistance. Our department has divided direct assistance to more than 1,200 residents through HRCS programs and services, including critical service assistance, housing stability, utility support, birth certificate assistance, human rights services, police misconduct investigation, and landlord-tenant support programs. HRCS also hosted 2 housing fairs. One was in partnership with the Michigan State University Housing Justice Clinic, and the other was with Legal Services of South Central Michigan. And more than 35 partner agencies were at those events. Additionally, we processed and distributed over $160,000 in direct assistance for eviction prevention and utility support. Finally, we continue to expand our impact by partnering with and funding community agencies that administer over 88 programs, serving as an extension of our mission to provide essential human services to the community. These efforts resulted in increased access to critical services and housing support for residents, stronger partnerships across departments and community organizations, and improved transparency, accountability, and program effectiveness. They also help to build community trust through consistent and inclusive engagement. We're really proud of the community engagement. So overall, these accomplishments demonstrate the department's ability to move from strategy to implementation by expanding housing opportunities, strengthening partnerships, and delivering critical services that improve outcomes for residents across the city. Question 2, the 3 priorities or goals our department aims to accomplish this year. Well, we want to go ahead and develop and implement a citywide homelessness strategic plan and also the NOVA initiative. We'll continue to work with the Continuum of Care and community partners to transition the Lansing's Path Forward study into a formal citywide strategic plan to combat homelessness. This includes, and we will continue to include the community. We will continue to engage the community as we fulfill these initiatives. A key component of this work is advancing the NOVA initiative to provide the transitional housing. Funding for these initiatives will support continued community engagement, our planning efforts, and operational and service costs that are tied to NOVA. Success would look like the completion and adoption of a citywide homelessness strategic plan, as mentioned, along with measurable progress in implementing its key recommendations. It also means the successful operational launch of the NOVA initiative, with residents actively transitioning toward permanent housing. Another priority of ours is to implement PAT Mission. PAT Mission is a centralized housing engagement and inventory platform to streamline housing searches and improve coordination across providers. This system will serve as a single access point for housing listings and will connect landlords, service providers, voucher holders, and residents. Funding is required for the platform acquisition and implementation, the ongoing system management, and landlord incentives to increase available housing units. Success would look like a full deployment of the platform and active participation from providers and landlords, and also an increased number of available housing units and placements, and reduce time to secure housing for individuals and families. Our third priority is to expand eviction prevention, housing stabilization, and keeping people safe during extreme weather conditions. The department will continue assisting the community through eviction prevention, utility assistance, and housing stabilization programs to help residents remain safely housed. Funding is essential to continue providing these programs, while we will also work to leverage additional community resources. Success in this area looks like, or it will be reflected in an increased number of households prevented from eviction or utility shutoff, and a reduction in the number of individuals entering homelessness due to proactive stabilization efforts. So we're trying to help them before entering homelessness. In regards to cold weather conditions, we all know that we experienced many days with dangerously low temperatures that posed serious risk to vulnerable residents, reinforcing the critical need for warming services and emergency support during these conditions. Success is keeping people safe and warm during these times, and that means that every resident, especially the most vulnerable, has access to a safe, warm place to stay during these weather conditions. It means that no one is left unsheltered during life-threatening temperatures. Warming centers are accessible and well utilized, and outreach efforts successfully connect individuals to shelter, transportation, and critical resources. What has changed in the budget request? Our department operations are still status quo from last year. We have no significant changes except for the pods. How are staffing levels and vacancies affecting your budget and operations? We have 2 vacancies and we plan to fill them as soon as possible. We don't anticipate staffing levels to have a major effect on the budget. We're not expecting any retirements that I know of. There have been a few times that we have had to use some overtime to address urgent matters in the community that warranted all hands on deck. What steps is your department taking to optimize the budget and contain costs? Well, our discretionary budget is small, not much cost to contain. We try to make sure that the dollars are put to the highest use while connecting people with resources. We remain committed to fiscal discipline, and by prioritizing operations and technological integration, we are effectively containing costs without compromising the quality of services that we are providing to the community. There are some things that we do to help with savings. For example, with utility assistance and eviction prevention, we partner with other agencies to help us and to leverage funds to help with this effort. The contract management team is currently actively researching and seeking out grants to help fund some of these initiatives. And also, I know I mentioned the extreme weather days, but during the extreme weather days that we had recently, we contacted the community and faith-based agencies who answered the call to open their spaces and help keep people warm. And so we also engaged volunteers to staff the locations and to help us with transportation to get people off of the streets and into the warming centers. Question 6. What internal metrics or performance-based strategies ensure operational efficiency? Well, currently we use WiseHive to help improve the contract management process and help us to disseminate information and keep the partner agencies and the community informed of different things. Our critical services team has partnered with 311, who assists us with phone calls and providing information to callers and helping us with that process. We also use the 311 portal to help track data and progress. We enter information into the case management system, and so that's how we're keeping up with our cases at this time. We also have partnered with Hope Hub. We are utilizing their system to monitor work being done to help families to transition from crisis to stability. This system allows interagency communication and helps with tracking and navigating that process. Our contract managers, they also do monitoring as part of our commitment to fiscal stewardship, program integrity, and continuous improvement. The contract management team conducts annual on-site monitoring visits with the agencies receiving City of Lansing funding. These visits are a critical component of our grant compliance and performance management framework. We monitor the agencies to ensure that the funds are utilized as agreed upon, and that the funds are benefiting the community as intended and helping with basic human needs. The contract management contract management team also conducts extensive training for the agencies on how to complete the application process and prepare for monitoring. HRCS continues to examine our processes in every area that we are responsible for in comparison to best practices and updating them in order to provide the best services to the community and keeping people safe. That concludes.
Just under the buzzer.
I talked that
All right.
long. Wow.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Are there questions from the City Council? Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. You spoke about the continuum of care and the partnership and engagement you have with housing experts in the field and in the region. Can you talk to what those partnerships and engagements look like?
Well, I know we are working with them with the homelessness study, the recommendations. We're working with them to come together so that we can create that strategic plan. We are also working with them on the NOVA project and
May I?
yeah, you can.
Good evening. We have multiple committees, both on the homelessness study and on the NOVA initiative, where we have engaged all of the agencies, as many that are willing to participate, in helping us to, one, create that strategic plan, and then two, help us in terms of laying out the foundation and the groundwork for the NOVA initiative.
Thank you. As far as the NOVA initiative, who will be staffing the pods daily? What will their mental health and housing qualifications and background be?
Who will be staffing it daily? What we have and what we have recently done, we released an RFP on the 19th of March, requesting an operating contracting agency who will provide all of the oversight and the security for the community. And so they'll be staffing it and making certain that the people are well taken care of, but also that they are working their individualized plans.
And that's just a security organization, or are there social workers and counselors involved at all?
Oh, no, ma'am. These are people who have I'm pushing for extreme experience in transitional housing, and they understand the operations of shelters, and they understand funding resources. So they'll have to help keep the doors open with additional funding, but also provide that oversight. So no, they will be people who are program directors, program managers, shelter expertise, and understanding where we're going with this program.
Okay. What did your department learn from the experiences from this winter housing folks in Causeway Bay, and what were some of the successes and also challenges that you're going to be taking to the NOVA initiative from that experience?
Take it to the NOVA initiative.
You want me to do it?
There was a two-part question.
Yes. So what I'm trying to get at here, I'm a social worker, so I'm very interested in what is the day-to-day going to look like. So what did your department do during this winter when you all were housing folks at Causeway Bay? What were some of the successes and challenges of that? And then how is that going to impact what you do depending on the NOVA initiative?
Okay.
Let me take it.
Yeah, you can. Well, I can speak to Causeway Bay. Okay, so with Causeway Bay, we ensured that people were working their housing plans. We had several agencies that went out to Causeway Bay twice a week to ensure that they were working their plans and getting the things that they needed so that they can successfully transition out. So I will.
Sure. But also, we recognize that the people that we placed at Causeway Bay will probably be different people than what will be at the NOVA project. The NOVA project will look at inviting people to participate whose complexities are probably a little less challenging than some of the people that may have been at Causeway Bay. Some of the people at Causeway Bay may not be ready for housing, and maybe their issues could have been a little bit more complex than what the NOVA project would be able to manage. And so that would be the difference. We learned a lot with Causeway Bay. We did step up when it was time to help get those people placed somewhere and out of the cold, but that's a whole different program than what we'll be doing with NOVA.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple more questions. How will we know or measure the impact of the pods and their success?
We are putting together an evaluation component for the pods along with the dashboard. And so we're currently working on that now. We have 5 committees with NOVA, and one of the committees will be dealing with addressing the evaluation component. In fact, Amy is here and she's chair of that committee. You want to talk a little bit about where we're going with that?
So we are meeting monthly, and one of the things that we have been discussing is what type of data we would like to see on the dashboard and what would be an indicator of success. So one of the things that we have been talking about adding, and we've been working with our IT department for, is the look of it, and some of the items that we would like to see is how many people we have in the program at a time, their average length of stay, what their success is after they've actually been housed, staying 3, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months outside of the program. But if anybody would be interested in joining any of our committees, you are welcome to, if you have additional information or suggestions.
Thank you. You mentioned engaging the community, right? And that's a broad sentiment. How have we engaged folks that are experiencing homelessness or folks that are unhoused and their perspective on the initiatives within your office?
Well, I know that PPA, when they were doing this study, they engaged them. Did they engage them by surveys?
Oh, yeah.
They engaged them in many different ways under Kim's leadership, so I'll let you speak more to that.
Yeah, they were an integral part of this whole homelessness study. One, you can't speak to their needs. They have to speak to them themselves. And so they've been quite involved in the homelessness study, both in focus groups. They went out to shelters. They went out to encampments. They talked to people on the street. They met folks in the agencies to gather information. Almost 300 of them were were unhoused that actually took part in the homelessness study. I'll tell you also that both between the homelessness study and the NOVA initiative, we do have people who have been unhoused or are currently unhoused. They were coming in 2 carloads at one of our meetings, and they actively participated. And let me also share that sometimes unhoused and unsheltered doesn't have a look. You hardly know sometimes the people that are around you that have experienced homelessness or have been unhoused at some point in their lives. Well, all of them have been able to contribute in some way or another to our efforts, and we are forever grateful because you can't develop something for somebody else without their input.
Thank you. And my last question, the NOVA initiative itself for temporary housing is quite a significant amount of money. Can you talk to the department's ability to be able to continue put funding towards our community partners that also have the same initiative to end homelessness or not putting it towards permanent housing?
Providing human services and trying to sustain funding to keep them up and running, it will always be a challenge for most of your human service organizations. But we anticipate going after federal, state, and local funds, looking at philanthropic opportunities. We are centering what we need to have happen in terms of how we are laying out the program so that we qualify for perhaps some of HUD's funding. We have a developer in our department, and we're going to work with the city's developer to help go after funding. So we have our eyes on every dollar that we can possibly get our hands on to help sustain and fund this program. We do recognize that there are some funds available with general funds. Our hopes are not to take funds from the agencies, but we may at some point have to prioritize, but hopefully that won't happen.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Councilmember Navarez-Martinez.
Thank you so much, President Spatafor. Thank you for being here today. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that the contract management team does monitoring visits with the agencies that receive, that have contracts with us. And I was wondering, are there any reports that come out of these, and do those remain internal? Are they shared with the administration? What comes out of those?
So After each of our monitoring visits, we get together as a team, review our monitoring form, and then any of those recommendations or best practices are shared with the agency themselves. We submit a letter to them, and if there is any follow-up that's needed, they have a timeline of when they need to submit those back. The information is shared with the agency. So, yeah.
Is it shared with the city administration or with if
Do you
there's if there's ever a finding that an agency is lacking in some way or needs reforming in some way?
You mean to council themselves?
Or to the mayor's office or whoever?
We don't report it directly to the mayor's office. We will any recommendations or any changes that need to happen, we ensure that those happen prior to the end of the grant cycle. And then if they are needed to be monitored next year, then we would do that as well to follow up on anything.
Have we ever had any significant issue with the funding agency where we find big discrepancies based on what we had contracted them to do, or?
Not anything that isn't able to be rectified during that grant cycle.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, sometimes we have to make the decision to sweep encampments or do things that, sometimes we don't want to do or wish we could do better but are you all working on perhaps maybe some coordination that if there is like a trespass order, for example, and something needs to be cleared out, to make sure that before it is cleared out, that the contracted organizations are out there making sure that everybody's been entered into the coordinated entry system? Is that something that is done, or are we working on it?
We're working on it.
Okay.
We're working on that currently.
And as much as we can, and as much as notice we're given, we will typically go out there and help make sure that they're informed and that they are aware of the opportunities for services and those kinds of things that are available to them. Mind you, we can't make them do anything, but we do notify the agencies when we know it's going to happen. Parks and Rec will notify the agencies as well. Our housing ombudsman goes out there, so we do try and provide as much support and information as we possibly can.
So we can't make the agencies that are contracted to do outreach? Is that? You said we can't make them do anything.
No. I meant the individuals that are
who are
in the
involved.
encampment.
Okay, so
we
if
don't
they
have
don't
any
wanna be
control
entered into
That's
the
right. If they don't want to
coordinated
go
entry
to one of the
system. Okay.
agencies, we can't force them to, but we do try and make sure that they're well informed.
Okay. And, as someone who believes that housing is a human right, I am very supportive of the NOVA initiative, and I'm supportive of the Ward 2 location. But I want to ask you if you think that the community really understands what it's going to look like and what it's going to do, because there is a reality where NOVA is 100% successful and the community doesn't see it, right? Because the folks that are going to be at NOVA are your housing ready folks, which is a really small population of those who are unhoused. And so if someone is someone who's sleeping at the park or on the sidewalk, they're not the people that are going into here. And so the community may not be able to see how successful this program is. Are there efforts to inform the public about that so that they understand exactly what it is that we're doing here?
I think I might be missing your question, but I'm going to try it anyway, if that's okay. We intentionally go out and talk to the public. In fact, we're now starting to meet with some of the organizations in the vicinity, Public Health, Department of Social Services, Tri-County Office on Aging, Ingham County Community Mental Health. We're now starting to meet with those folks so that they are well aware as well of what it is that's going to be happening, to get their feedback, to answer their questions, and to try and put their minds at ease. What I've learned is that most of the people who hear about it right away feel like it's going to be a sanctioned encampment, which is far different than what we're talking about doing. And so the more people we talk to, the better people have an understanding. And we encourage people as they learn from us, to please share what they've learned with others. We're going to keep talking to people as much as we possibly can and as much as they allow us to. But you're absolutely right. It will be a different population, and we'll see what happens. But we're going for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hussein.
Sure, just one quick question. It's good to see you, Kim, again.
Good to see you.
And I actually wanted to piggyback on Councilwoman Martinez's last question. And so for folks that aren't aware, we have, at least I believe it's a pretty unique ordinance, where 1.35% of our general fund is set aside every year for basic human services. And the spirit of that has always been to ensure that no matter the political pressure, the budget pressure, right, that has existed at the time, that there's a good amount of resources flowing into the community, to organizations, to nonprofits, to programs that really are aimed at supporting our most vulnerable residents. So I just want to clarify: is there a world? Because I thought I heard something in there. Is there a world where some of that, if maybe not all of that money, is used for the Lansing Housing NOVA initiative? Sorry.
It would be my hope that that would not be the case. There are other needs out there in that community, in our community, that are not unhoused. I mean, there are programs that we fund for youth. There are programs that we fund for mental health and substance abuse and God knows whatever else. And so it would be my hope that we would not go and remove those funds from those agencies. And if that were the case, it would be a decision between the mayor's administration and of course you all would be voting on it, but that would not be the plan.
I appreciate that. And just one quick follow-up on the initiative. I was actually at Luton Ridge Neighborhood Association meeting this past Thursday. Incredibly active board. We actually have Ivan Drosty in the gallery right now. Incredible board member, but they always ask great questions. And there was a lot of interest in this initiative. And there was, questions about the RFP, questions about, we actually had Rachel Willis from the Ingham County Board of Commissioners there. So there was some discussion about our engagement with the county, where we're at with those discussions. But ultimately, I think the interest was, are we still on track to open this by, and whatever that date is or month is or whatever quarter is, where are we at with those things?
Listen, don't make me throw numbers out there anymore. We have done a lot of preliminary estimates. We're now looking for firm numbers. And once we get our contractors on board, they're going to solidify our budget and they're going to also confirm our dates. Not without some heavy urgency placed upon them, don't get me wrong. It is still my hope that we can get the doors open sometime during the winter months, but I am really hesitant to throw out any more numbers at this point. One, you're going to hold my feet to it. And two, we won't know until we get everybody involved.
That's fair. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We're going to move on through our agenda, but I'm going to make a quick announcement to those in the audience. We are still in the committee of the whole. We got a few more business items, then we'll take a recess, and then we will bring the city council back to order. So if you're here for our 7 o'clock meeting, we've got a few more items of business during the committee of the whole, and then we will move on. Up next for the committee of the whole is public comment on agenda items. And reminder, you have 3 minutes to make your public comment. First person speaking this evening is Loretta Stanaway, followed by Gabriel Biber.
Okay, in order to try and get everything in the 3 minutes, I'm going to just do kind of bullet points. This is about the proposed placing onto the budget for the public to vote on selling the shuffle. And so first off, I would like to say that I don't think democracy is the topic we need here. I think what we need to talk about more is the availability of information to the public. In the past, whenever there's been anything, whatever it might be, put on the ballot for the public to vote on it, there's been a great disparity between the information the public gets from whatever opposition there is and whatever information the public gets from the administration, the chamber, whomever is pushing for that particular item on the ballot. So I think that before any further issues get put on the ballot for the public to vote on, there needs to be a way to address that disparity. So I would like to suggest that no item can be put before the public on a ballot to vote on unless there is a way to balance that. And that would probably mean some kind of a fund that would be a matching fund so that the opposition would have access to equal amounts of money as to whatever the administration and the chamber and the proponents were going to be spending on mailers, on media processes, whatever the case might be. So, I mean, they do it with the presidential elections. The debates have to be equal time on the television to keep the public equally informed of both candidates or sides of whatever the issue is. So that's my suggestion first and foremost. We don't put anything else on a ballot to a public vote unless we ensure first that there's a way that they get adequate information from both sides of the story so they can make an informed and fair decision. Other aspects of it are this. I don't think we need to be selling parkland, no matter where it is, for whatever purpose. Parkland is intended to be for public use, not for private enterprise. Second, why should we lose a place that we could never regain if something failed? If the shuffle fails 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line, and the contract says the city can buy it back if they want to, where is the city going to come up with $1 million or so to buy back something that isn't a failing venture? It's not realistic or practical to think that's an option or an out. We should not be disposing of parkland at all. We should not be further degradizing space denoted in the city charter that initially was promised to always be a city market. I don't know that it's still in the charter, but at one point it was in the charter that that land always would be a city market. When it was first sold, or when it was first renovated to the new building, the idea was, well, it doesn't have to be in that space. The city can have a city market somewhere else. Well, that didn't ever happen.
Thank you. Next is Gabriel Bieber, followed by Deborah Mulcahy.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, all. It's Biber. So this is the tale of the parking lot and the Sugar Shack. How do we as the public participate in the budget process, particularly to advocate that the city take responsibility for the capital assets in the city's parks? Gabriel, I'm the executive director of Fenner Conservancy, which has its headquarters at Fenner Nature Center. As you may know, Fenner provides all the wonderful programming to the community. The city needs to keep up the assets there. That includes a lovely 68-year-old gem of the city of Lansing, the Maple Grove Pavilion, which was part of the initial opening back when it was the ARB. Still there, but it won't be for long, needs to be replaced. As the bug's eye view of this budget process, I was happy to see, the public input process at the end of last year. We, along with all the other members of the public here in the city of Lansing, advocated for $1.1 million potential improvements to parks assets. Some were recommended by city staff and some were not. 2 that we were excited to see were the Maple Grove Pavilion replacement and also improvements to our parking lot. When those went to the Parks Board, there was some enthusiasm there, but I think the Parks Board really saw it as an either or. We're throwing all this money at a parking lot for Fenner, and so we can't also replace the Maple Grove Pavilion. Obviously, it's a false argument because this is all for the benefit of the community, and both of those things were deferred for far too long. But I did not see anything about parks or capital assets on the agenda anywhere in the listing of the hearings for the budget today or otherwise. So here I am with my what remains of 3 minutes to try to make the case on behalf of the public for that lovely Maple Grove Pavilion, which serves more than 10,000 people a year, including over probably 7,000 plus at our festivals, and many low-income students who that is a banner destination for them for their field trips, among many other uses by cultural groups in the community, et cetera. So very grateful, and I'm sure the community will be grateful with their vehicles for the parking lot replacement, which I think is somewhere in the budget there, either under the millage approved or otherwise the improvements there. Thank you for including that, Andy. But we also need to keep up with all of those improvements at the parks. So please, Don't let another year go by and then think, oh, maybe we'll include Maple Grove next year. Because at the pace of implementation, things that were approved last year have still not been completed yet. Okay, what else? We really appreciate working with all the departments, parks, building and maintenance, Mr. Kilpatrick's department, everyone. It's all a village to make this happen. We need it in the budget, though, so that the community can get another many decades of educational use out of the Maple Grove Pavilion, or Sugar Shack, as we fondly refer to it. I'm very grateful to serve the city in this regard. Contact me at director@mynaturecenter.org if you want to discuss it. Please keep riparian lands public, and no tax breaks for AI data centers. Thank you.
Okay, next is Deborah Mulcahy, and finally, I just want to double check. Mr. Spike, are you still here? No, okay. And then Frederick McLaughlin. Mrs. Deborah Mulcahy?
Good evening, people. Am I on now? Thank you. Good evening, people. I don't know if anybody has seen, but I haven't. Is there a sign or signs coming into the city that say, for sale, or we're giving away? Because that's what I feel like we've been dealing with. The data center and now the shuffle. What do we learn? Where is our history? Where is the cost, time, and energy spent in reference to this? You've heard my four-letter words, goal, plan. What's the plan to get to our goal? The public said in 2018, we don't want you to sell that parkland. I would actually even consider something along the lines of the shuffle being sold if you didn't consider selling anything to do with the land. Sell the building, just like they do in Canada. You don't get to own the land. Stop and evaluate where you are right now. The lessee has a financial situation. I don't know who in the city acquiesced to $3,800 a month for a prior lessee to go to $2,000 a month. Such a deal. Sign me up. The lessee says it's financially more lucrative for them to be the owner. There's no checks and balances here. When you look at the land, how did the land become ours? Mr. City Attorney said some of that land was acquired with federal money. Was that land trust fund money? If it was, it's not dollar for dollar payback. I don't know if state of Michigan trust fund money was involved. Historically, you have to look at what the city was looking to do for residents who were in floodplains and in the floodway. They were looking to buy out homes. So when the city allowed this land to be filled, what does it do? It displaces the water. It puts it on those people that have already been impacted and continue to be impacted. And if anybody doesn't know that we've had flooding in Lansing in the last few weeks, I don't know where you've been. Historically, when you look at places like Chicago in the 1800s and until 1940s, what did they do? They filled Lake Michigan with waste. And they filled it after the big fires. They filled it with waste. They learned. The Manistique Bridge, US 2, filled with PCB contaminated soils. What's the fill? What has been the fill? I do not support this. Separate, unrelated issue to this, the 311 Augie Call Center, they are a gift. They are wonderful. The issue of code compliance and enforcement and building safety, I think our wastewater treatment plant smells a lot better than code compliance. I give you one property, northeast corner of MLK and Shiawassee. You look at that garage that's visible to everyone that goes by there on MLK, and you tell me that's a new issue. No, I know it's been reported for at least 5 years. I don't feel like there's accountability in code compliance. If you want to make this city a better place for people to live and want to be, do something about code compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is Frederick McLaughlin. Frederick? Sorry about that.
I wasn't intending on saying anything, actually.
Oh.
So I'll let you off.
You're all set?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Our next item of business, that does, City TV, do we have any virtual public comment? Usually no. No, okay, thank you. Our next order of business is the appointment of Patrick Spike as an at-large member of the Lansing Entertainment and Public Facilities Authority Board of Commissioners with a term to expire June 30th, 2026. Vice President Pelli Vondeglo. Oh, yes, one moment, please. Councilmember Carter.
Yes, thank you. I am asking to be excused from voting on this resolution pursuant to Charter 3-205.2. There is no conflict of interest or financial benefit underneath the charter or ethics ordinance, but given the nature of my employee-employer relationship, I will ask this body to be excused from the voting.
It is a proper request. Do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Carter from the vote? It's been moved by Councilmember Hussein. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item before us is the resolution for the appointment of Patrick Spike as an at-large member of the LEPFA Board of Commissioners. Vice President Pelivanoglou.
Thank you. Mr. Spike had his interview earlier in this meeting and expressed his desire to serve the public in this leadership role. The involvement in the downtown Lansing area includes having sponsored the lug nuts for the last several years, and he understands that the properties within LEPFA are important assets to the city. With that, I will move the resolution for the appointment of Patrick Spike as an at-large member of the LEPFA Board of Commissioners with a term to expire June 30th, 2026.
Thank you. And just as a point of clarification, the vote to recuse Councilmember Carter was 6-0. Councilmember Garza is not here. That is a proper motion. Any discussion on this appointment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. The next item is the resolution for placing the Act 4 2026 sale of Lansing Shuffle Building 325 Riverfront Drive on the ballot for August 4th, 2026. Is there a motion? Councilmember Pellegrini, sorry.
Thank you. I move the resolution for a ballot proposal, Act 4-2026, sale of the Lansing Shuffle Building at 325 Riverfront to appear on the ballot for the August 4th, 2026 election.
That is a proper motion. As you'll recall, we had this before us a few weeks back. We had a presentation from the current occupants and tenants. We wanted to wait until the Parks Board had a chance to weigh in. The Park Board did weigh in with a vote of 4-3-1 against. Is that correct? All right. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Councilmember Hussein.
Yes, I have a few questions for.
Can you turn your mic?
Sorry, I have a few questions for Law and potentially the mayor. And I kind of teed up, Greg, we actually had some conversation last week about this, just so that I could better understand what would happen after, right, the placement of this on the ballot. Also had some conversations out in neighborhood meetings last week. So first question for the city attorney, if the council votes to place this on the ballot and the electorate says yes, what is the process thereafter?
Sure. So if the council votes to place it on the ballot, it's placed on the ballot. If the majority of the electorate says yes, then all that does is sort of unlock the city's ability to sell through the remainder of the normal process. So a buy-sell agreement would have to be negotiated between Shuffle and the city, and then that agreement would be placed on file with the clerk, and then 30 days would pass, and this is all pursuant to the charter. 30 days would pass, and then a public hearing could be held, and then 7 days has to pass after the public hearing before the council would vote. And so that all would be into the future if the electorate said yes.
And to approve the land sale, it would have to be a supermajority vote, correct?
It would be a six vote item by this body.
Perfect.
Six yeas in favor of the contract that contains the actual terms of the sale.
And there was actually a comment just made. Was a sale of the structures on the property coupled with a land lease explored? And if so, why was it determined that that was not a viable option moving forward?
Yeah, this is I'm going to try to keep it as simple of an answer as I can for the sake of time. I could talk for quite a while on this, as you know, we've talked about it. The difficulty with the idea of selling a structure and not the land, this is a thing that can be done. It can be explored. You can have a 100-year land lease. First of all, if you have a 100-year land lease with a sale of the structure, that's going to be considered tantamount to the sale. So it would be basically exactly the same as, and my office has opined in the past when questions like this have come up, it would still have to go to vote by the people. It would still have to get approved by the council through all the ordinary process. It wouldn't be a way to sort of bypass that, one. But two, more importantly, when we talk about having a very long land lease with a sale of just the structure on the property, unless, if the hope is that the city can retain some control of what happens with that land by having a very long lease as opposed to a sale, that would defeat almost always any ability by the purchaser and lessee to secure any kind of financing. Because at the end of the day, what a bank, what a lender, what all lenders are looking at is, do we have the ability, let me back up. When you buy a house, if a person is buying a house, or when you buy a car, the bank takes as the collateral for the loan the thing you bought. So if a bank lends money to or refinances to different financing for a business that has bought just the building and not the land underneath the building, at the end of the day, they can't pick up the building and take it away and sell it to somebody else. So the bank, the lender, whoever it is going to need to have the ability to sell the thing to recoup their losses if there's some default scenario or anything like that. And so under a land lease, most lenders, and I've in the course of, not in the course of this specific deal, but I've talked to enough banks and lenders through development projects with the city, a lender is not going to say, sure, that's sufficient security for me if in the lease it says, and by the way, you can't sell this to anybody else because this is our land underneath it. You can't do this, that, or the other thing with it. It just doesn't, a bank isn't going to say yes to that.
Fair.
Sorry, that was pretty long.
Nope, that's good. So if this does go to the citizenry and with a simple majority vote, they say yes, go ahead and enter negotiations and we'll see. We'll give City Council another bite at the apple at some point down the line. What types of protections can be added, and whether it's the buy-sell agreement, whether it's the deed itself, both which will be recorded obviously with the Register of Deeds. What types of protections can be added into those documents to ensure that no contrary, in terms of what we want to see there, right? Nothing contrary to that happens in the future.
And some of these, I will speak with specificity as to things that I think have been publicly acknowledged, and then I have to speak somewhat generally just because some of those things would be yet to be negotiated. But I know, for example, the provisions that were in the lease that was approved by council, that is currently the document through which Shuffle is operating in that building, those same requirements and provisions, I know that John Hartzell has agreed to include. So, for example, we could have restrictive covenants in the deed or in the sale agreement that gets recorded, or we can record that, or we can record it in a deed, essentially that says, for example, there shall always be access to a public restroom and a public drinking fountain, or public restrooms and public drinking fountains. We can include restrictions, reasonable, I'll explain that a little bit, restrictions on the use of the property. For example, I know that in the lease agreement it says it can't be used for marijuana sales or distribution. It can't be used as like an off-site liquor sales location. And I can't remember if there's a reference to pornography or not. There have been in deals that we have done in the past. But those kinds of things, the items, the restrictions on use currently in the lease, those can be included in a deed, and it would essentially say, you can't do this. If you do, the penalty is the property immediately becomes ours again. And then functionally how that would work is they would have a very strong reason to not do that, and a bank who gave them money to use the property would flip out if they started doing it wrong, because the bank loses their asset to us as well. That's sort of the items that I know have been talked about publicly. In terms of other such things, there are reasonable restrictions that a court, if the document ever gets challenged, would be able to uphold. Things that don't work are provisions like you can't sell to anyone ever, or you can't sell to anyone for a period of 10 years or 20 years or even 5 years, because at that point it's not really a true sale. It just becomes a very complicated lease type arrangement. So a court would toss out a hard restriction on sale to anyone else, but limited uses that still allow for economic activity on the property would be permissible. But I can't speak for what could be in there, but I can speak to the items that have been proposed so far as being legal.
Okay. A lot has been said about the rights of first refusal. I want folks to know what that would look like, number one. Would the purchase price be limited to debt? And then are there any other guardrails in place to ensure that the city could actually afford to purchase the property back, if so desired, should we come to that?
Again, this is a fairly complicated answer, and I'm sorry. Right of first refusal, I think a better term, a better way to describe it is a right to repurchase. And I only say that because essentially the way it works is if there's a right of first refusal, either in a deed or in a sale document, what that means is that the seller has the ability that in the event, we would be the seller, in the event that the new owner is in a position to either sell themselves or somebody has stepped into their ownership position through a mortgage lien, for example, a bank takes over through foreclosure. At that point, if the bank wants to sell or if the new owner wants to sell, they would have to come to us and say, do you want to buy it first? The question of what that purchase number is going to be governed by either something that gets negotiated at the time, but if there's a bank involved, the bank is going to be very involved in what that number is, or there are provisions that can be drafted where the essentially the debt load that property is secured or is the security for would be essentially the purchase price. So it's kind of like if somebody's buying a property through a sheriff sale, they can essentially just take the deed, you can go to the sheriff and say, I will pay you whatever the county is owed in order to give me the property now. I mean, they go through auction if it's worth anything, but as long as that debt, whatever the debt remaining is cleared, then the owner or foreclosing entity that would be at least the number that has to get met by our purchase price if we are exercising the right to repurchase first.
Okay. Should the sale never be effectuated, and let's say Detroit Rising goes belly up, or they enact the provision within the lease agreement where they basically provide the city with a notice of intent to withdraw, essentially. What does that mean for Lansing?
Okay. We talked about this. I've got to stick to just legal ramifications, so I'm going to stick with that. Obviously, under the lease, if they signaled that they want to terminate, we don't collect rents anymore. We would lose whatever income tax is being collected by people that are employed there. And then the other thing is any items that are, because there were improvements made to the structure interior. There were new walls put up. There was new infrastructure installed. That would all stay put, but anything that is a secured piece of essentially furniture or equipment, freezers, grills, all the stuff because there's food in there, those would almost certainly be taken by whatever bank lent the money to put them there, or whatever they are being used as security for. So most of everything that can be unplugged and wheeled out is going away, and everything else is staying put, and then it's just a vacant space again.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, can I, Councilman, for the non-legal answer, and I think you and, sorry, I'm not legal.
Please.
That's right, the non-legal answer. I think you and Councilman Garza and Councilman Spatafor were the three who were here on council, although I think almost everybody lived here. It would go back to the way it was before we sold it, before we leased it, which was empty. It was empty, it was unused. You can go back and look and see, we all talked about we were going to activate this space. We're going to activate this space. Before it was empty, it was the Waterfront Bar and Grill, which we were subsidizing. So we were subsidizing a fairly bad restaurant, which had a lot of violations. That's how it was when I came in. It was the Waterfront Bar and Grill and a cheese shop, which left 3 months in. So the non-legal answer is if they said we're killing the lease, then it would once again be empty. And we had a year or two where we had the public coming in and trying to figure out what to do with it, lots of great ideas, but nobody with financing or backing, which is why we put together the lease, which is why this council passed the lease, I think 7-1 at the time. I think Councilwoman Wood was the only one to vote no, because we wanted to get that active, and we said, let's let these guys try, and then if they get it active, then they can come back to us and ask about going to the ballot to keep this property in for this purpose. So I think that's the non-legal part.
Okay. Just a few more? President Spence. Okay, thank you. Can you discuss, and this is for Greg, why the city would not do another appraisal if the citizenry was to vote a sale up with regard to the project.
Sure. So you mean, I think it's, why is there not a new appraisal, or why is the purchase price described, or why is the purchase price set as it's set in the contract currently?
In other words, we're prohibited from doing one. Is that correct? To the provision within the lease?
I would say we're not prohibited from doing one. The lease, one of the terms in the lease agreement that was approved by council was that if they have the ability to come back and say, we'd like to sell, and then this process begins. If the question gets to the ballot, if the people say yes, and if there is a buy-sell agreement that's approved by this council, at that point, the purchase price is determined by, and this part is in the contract. So the thing that I'll say is it would be, the city could not say, okay, but we're going to sell it to you for this number instead. That would be a breach of contract by the city. That number is from an appraisal that was taken close in time to the point that the negotiations began to set up the lease agreement. And that was an appraisal of the building as it stood then. There have been a substantial amount of improvements to the building since then that were all done at the expense of the current lessee, so Lansing Shuffle LLC. Ordinarily, and this was, I don't mind saying this because I was there when this was being discussed, but ordinarily that's not how commercial lease and commercial real property works. The owner is the one that makes the improvements. The owner is the one that puts up the walls where they need to go so that their user can show up and use. And then they charge usually a much higher rent, and then the user uses. In this situation, the city determined that we didn't have the money, and the Lansing Shuffle said, we will take that on. We will make those improvements, because they hoped that if it was successful, they would be in a place to come back and then want to try to purchase. And so the bargain that was struck, and this is what's contained in the lease agreement, is that take that appraised value prior to the improvements, look at all the public dollars, because there was some brownfield money that was approved, or they were able to use a brownfield plan that previously existed, so there was some Lansing tax dollars that were captured to put into the property. So take the appraised value, take the amount of public dollars that went in to help pay for the improvements to the property, our asset, combine those, and then multiply times the sort of, what's the word? It's not cost of living, but the, what's that? Yes, inflation, but I'm trying to think of what the actual, what's that report? CPI, thank you. The CPI over that period of time to figure out, okay, what's the value of those dollars essentially with our return on equity for the investment that city dollars made to help pay for those improvements, and then that's the number that we would agree to sell the property for, so that we are paid back for what we gave to them before they paid to improve it.
Okay. Is there anything that would keep the mayor from sending us an appropriation with the buy-sell agreement that would actually appropriate these dollars to the Parks Department as opposed to the general fund?
No, nothing would prevent that. Okay. And I will take the opportunity, because I think the question was asked about a comment that I had made several weeks ago. None of where this building sits is deed restricted either by some prior federal or state grant to acquire or anything like that. It's something that we would have the ability to sell if, again, council says put it on the ballot, the electorate votes for it, the mayor brings back a buy-sell agreement, and the council approves that.
And then last question, does the ballot language as written, it's pretty vague, and it doesn't identify, as an example, a purchaser. So if this was approved by the electorate, is it possible that the administration and the city council could at some point down the line actually engage with another entity to buy? And my concern is, yes, council would still have that second bite at the apple, and constituents maybe through their council members in that process would have another say. But the reality is that these people are being asked to go to the people that we represent, work for. They're being asked to go to the ballot to consider a sale to this group that made considerable investments into the property and have had 3 years of successful operations.
Yes, so your question is, if
Based on
if
this
the electorate
language.
says yes, right, that would unlock the sale to someone. It doesn't say specifically to this entity. There's not a restriction that it go only to this entity. And I guess probably one of the best comparisons is, it's not exactly a perfect one, but the ballot question for the ultimate sale of Red Cedar property didn't specifically say who it's being sold to, and who it was ultimately sold to was, I mean, over the course of time, it was a slightly different entity than it was originally when the ballot question came up. So, yes.
Okay. Just really quickly before I potentially move to amend. So I've deeply engaged folks on this, whether it be constituent contact, meetings, neighborhood meetings, lots of emails, lots of calls. And really there seem to be two concerns. And I think one is that at some point, the citizenry would really lose their power to kind of steer meaningful aspects of the sale. And that's kind of what I think generated some of the questions that I posed last week to you. And we learned, obviously, there's quite a bit that would have to happen after a vote, and there would be opportunity, obviously, for citizens to continue to weigh in, and for council, frankly, to be kind of on the front end of some of that, working with the administration and making sure some of the protections and guardrails and things of that nature that the community wants to see should, again, this be a successful ballot initiative, but that those would be actually implemented. And if not, obviously, this body would have the opportunity to vote that buy-sell agreement down. The second is that there's a very real concern that the city, as opposed to being maybe objectively forthcoming with information, would actually kind of toe the line in terms of propaganda and working to influence voters. And so I think, and with regard to that concern, I think we as a body have an opportunity, I think, to maybe establish tone and tenor. So again, when we're talking about being objectively forthcoming, I struggle a little bit with language in the resolution. I talked about this a couple weeks back. And I would want to, if I were to support this, I would really want that fourth whereas to go away, where it talks about how we agree and don't believe that there's any useful, life beyond this with regard to that particular facility. I just think that is some measure of influence in terms of the language. And then the other piece is I really am not fond of the ballot language at all. I think it is, it's too concise. And then the legal language that actually identifies the location, I think is confusing at best. And so I guess what I'm asking President Spada for, because there's really two things I want to do, is potentially move to amend the resolution to strike that fourth whereas, and then offer, unless there's something that prohibits this ballot language, offer some adjustments to the ballot language, which I actually, Councilmember Cost and myself worked on. So I actually have those printed out if this is something that would be amenable to the group, so we can actually pass that out. And I'll read that very quickly.
Do you want to do the first one first?
Sure. I would move that we actually strike the fourth whereas from our resolution. Yes.
Okay. That is a proper motion. Any discussion on this? Yes.
Sorry, I'm getting to the resolution. It's not printed in front of me. I just want to see what that.
Let me read it for everyone. It's
Sure.
Whereas the sale of property is in the best interest of the city, the property is not necessary for city operations, and the city will no longer incur the expense associated with maintenance of the property
And just for clarification, I don't want to be part of a vote where this body is collectively saying that we agree that there is no value, essentially, to maintaining this particular facility.
The only thing that I'm looking at is in the charter, there's a couple locations where part of the determination, I mean, I know it has to be ultimately in the buy-sell agreement, and it's usually contained, but not always, in the resolution approving a buy-sell agreement. There has to be a acknowledgement that this is not, this recommend to be kept.
The actual resolution, yeah. Thank you.
Same.
Technology, you gotta love it. So but we could strike the sale of the properties in the best interest of the city. So we could, in terms of complying or comporting with the charter, put whereas the property is not necessary for city operations and the city will no longer incur the expenses associated with maintenance on the property.
Yeah, I believe that would be fine. I'm double checking the charter language right now, but.
Or whereas the administration is determined that the property is not. Would either one of those be fine? Or both?
Striking the first clause is fine.
First sentence.
Sorry.
The sale of the property is in the best interest of the city.
Sorry,
Striking
the first,
that.
well, yeah, the first clause of that whereas. I know it's a clause and a
okay.
clause, but it's separated by commas, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm double checking the language in the charter to make sure. The phrase that I care the most about is the property is not necessary for city operations. If you keep that, the remainder, you can do whatever you'd like.
So then could I move to amend, which I'm going to change the language to whereas the property is not necessary for city operations, and just leave it at that.
That would be sufficient. Yes. That is.
So moved.
That is a proper motion. Is there discussion on the amendment? Yes. Councilmember Martinez.
Yeah, I guess just because it was printed ahead of time and we're almost at 8 o'clock, was there a reason that the whole council has not been presented this until right now?
If I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Martinez was working on this right up to about the start of the meeting. Sorry.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And then if that upsets you, this is probably going to upset you as well, so I apologize. The language in terms of the ballot, whereas the city of Lansing proposes to sell a portion of 325 Riverfront Drive, including the building known as Lansing Shuffled, the property and adjacent land and legally described as, again, incredibly concise, I think, for some folks, not nearly when we talk, again, objectively forthcoming. I just want to make sure people know exactly what they are voting on. And so the language that we've provided is, shall the city of Lansing be authorized to sell the property formerly known as the Lansing City Market, currently known as Lansing Shuffle Building, located at 325 Riverfront Drive on the Grand River adjacent to Rotary Park, behind the Lansing Center between Shiawassee Street and Michigan Avenue, legally described as.
I just want to be clear.
Yes.
You said in a whereas, is this in a be it resolved?
So in the resolution,
Okay.
the ballot language that would be added is actually there. I'm sorry, and I don't think I read that right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The ballot language is actually on page 2. I apologize. It says, shall the city of Lansing be authorized to sell the property known as Lansing Shuffle Building, legally described as. So even more concise than what I just read. And so my motion would be that we change that in terms of eventual ballot language to what is in front of you in written format.
Yep. And so if the question is, to me, is there anything about that language that's wrong or illegal? It's fine. The only observation I will make, and I'm sorry to be a pedant, but you have the property formerly known as the Lansing City Market. I think it should be formerly known as Lansing City Market.
You're absolutely correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Otherwise, that's fine. And I will say, just for everybody's benefit, this language was modeled on all of the prior sales. We went back and looked at all the ones that we could find easily, going back to 2011. This is the way that they've all been structured for sales of parks property. It's a really short intro sentence and then legal description.
Which informed, just so you know this, because we have gotten a lot of criticism as a body.
I hear that.
In terms of approving said language.
And I will say, the thing about it is, almost all of the prior sales of park property have the word park in that section.
Right,
This
right.
does not, because of the way that it's described. And there are, of the 12 that we found, there were 2 that didn't say park, but still had this format, but there's nothing wrong with this change. So.
Is there a limitation on words for the ballot? This is 118 words as written.
One moment.
Assuming the ballot language includes the property description.
He's somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Where's
Mr.
our clerk?
Yeah, there he is. He's feverishly scrolling through something. You can join us whatever mic you want, as long as it's on.
I believe there's no limit to local ballot proposal language length. That limit, the 100-word limit, relates to state proposals. So
You believe that to be true?
I will say,
without
from the ballot,
going and looking at I mean, if you look at the ballot that's before us, our voters right now, that's
from the prior resolutions that approved a ballot question, some of them, the legal description was almost a full page long, so I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
I think we have to print this everywhere too, though, right? In newspaper?
just a summary.
Okay.
But yeah.
Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up.
I did. First, I am fully supportive of this. I think it's a good clarification. My only question is, and again, I'm not a lawyer, as we've established. It says behind the Lansing Center, between Shiawassee Street and Michigan Avenue, because it's only it technically is between the two, but it doesn't go from Michigan to Shiawassee. Does that matter or not? It doesn't matter. Just because it's between the two, we're good?
Legal description. I'm sorry. I will let the lawyer answer
No,
the question.
A plus non-lawyer answer. The legal description clarifies that for all the legal concerns, and I don't think it's specifically misleading to say it's between Shiawassee and Michigan.
I think this is a good clarification. I appreciate that, Councilman Hussein and Council. Thank you.
Anything else on this amendment, formerly known as the formality amendment? All right. Okay, that is a proper motion as amended for the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Now, the question before any further discussion, Councilmember Cost.
I assume this is discussion on the main vote now. Yes. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, in the lease, can you tell us, is there a provision right now in this lease that kept that rent so cheap? Just because the 2,000 seems much lower than any other commercial space available.
Well, I mean, actually, this is the most boring answer, I think, so far. The provision that describes what the rent is just sets it at that, $2,000 a month. There's, I think at some point in the future, there's a recalculation of what that rent ought to be if the property doesn't get sold and the lease continues. But that's the number that was negotiated, that's the number that was agreed upon, and that was the number that was approved by council at the time.
And then the other question I have, so I went to the Parks Board meeting, and I was there to hear the discussion from the Park Board members, their concerns, the public's concerns. I believe the owner was there to present. One of the things that was repeatedly said was the city needs to keep their oath or keep their word on this deal. Could you explain to me what section F on page 3 means in the lease?
You'll have to forgive me, I do not have the lease agreement open. I'm looking at many other documents at this time. Is that the section that talks about their ability to come and trigger the process to start?
Correct, the process. And what it specifically says about this process, because it was sold as a city promise that we would do this process of selling.
Sure. The process, I guess, the language in that section talks about initiating this process, meaning that the administration would put together a resolution, bring it to the council, and make the honest proposal to the council to get the question on the ballot and start the process.
Okay. But, so I do understand this part correctly then, that the leasee further acknowledges that initiation of such proceedings by the city is not a promise or covenant that sale of the building and premise will result.
That's correct. The city attorney at the time that drafted that made sure that council was not bound to take an action. A future council was not bound to take a future action, that they would have no
So we're not bound
specific,
to do this thing.
Correct. That a prior council had bound them to. Sorry.
Okay. For all those reasons, and our park board, who are volunteers, took a look at this, dug into it, I'm going to vote no to put this on the ballot. I think that even with the wording change in this resolution, it still is quite confusing, and there's a lot of caveats to this, including a better real estate deal, I think, than anyone else would get, because there's no one buying a new house in Lansing that is getting it off an appraisal that was done several years ago. You are paying what you are paying when you buy the house. It's a current appraisal. And I think this is a rotten deal for the citizens of Lansing, and there's no way to encompass all of that into the language on this ballot. And further, I think the question was asked, will you stay here if you continue to lease it? And the answer was yes during the public hearing. The answer was yes. If we can't buy it, we would still stay here to lease. I think that, the mayor can, with all the new tools you're getting in that area right now and hundreds of new residents, that if something were to happen to the Lansing Shuffle, that this would be an easily leasable space. There are going to be tons of new people living in that tower, living in the LHC housing, the new City Hall, the new Ovation. You're bringing downtown alive again, and so I don't know that you would have trouble with it just sitting empty. As you had mentioned earlier, someone had mentioned the difficulty of leasing it out. I think that certainly the circumstances have changed since you came to office in 2017 or 2019. I can't remember what year. Yeah. So I'm a no vote.
Thank you. Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 8 minus 1 is 7 minus 1 is 6-1. That is going to be on the agenda tonight. For those still here in the audience, we are still in the committee of the whole. So the city council will convene later on this evening. We have one more piece of business before us, and that is a closed session. Vice President Palivanoglou, one moment, please. Can we take a 30-second recess? Yeah, we've pushed this off a couple weeks in a row, so we're going to go ahead and go with the closed session. Vice President Palivanoglou.
Thank you, President Spatafor. Pursuant to MCL 15.268E, I hereby move that we recess into closed session to consult with the city attorney in connection with the following specific pending litigation. An open meeting will have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement positions of the city of Lansing concerning these cases. Keith Allen v. City of Lansing, Tashawn Bernard v. City of Lansing et al., City of Lansing v. Adelaide MDMC and Pad Sinab, City of Lansing v. Eli Lilly et al., City of Lansing v. CCLP, City of Lansing et al. V. Purdue Pharma et al., Avis Coward v. Douglas Hall, Keith Eskin v. Melanie Smith et al., David Fountain v. City of Lansing et al., David Hokinson v. City of Lansing et al., Anthony Hulon v. City of Lansing et al., Republican National Committee v. City of Lansing, Robinson Memorial Church of God in Christ v. City of Lansing, Robinson Memorial Church of God in Christ v. City of Lansing et al., Ashley Romero for the estate of Stephen Romero v. City of Lansing et al., William Russell v. City of Lansing et al., and Delaney Willis v. City of Lansing. We will be joined in closed session by Mark Lawrence.
Thank you. At 8:00, oh, no, that's not how that works. We'll need a roll call
Councilmember
vote.
Cost? Yes. Councilmember Hussein? Yes. And Councilmember Navarez Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Palivanoglou?
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter? Yes. 7-0.
It is 7-0, and we are in closed session. The Committee of the Whole is back in open session at 8:19, and at 8:19 we are adjourned. For those of you waiting for City Council to start, we're going to take an 11-minute break. We'll be back at 8:30 to start the City Council meeting.